Hey guys, welcome back to the Pylon Show. Trying to use my indoor voice here for our producer. This is going to be a really fun episode. I mean, here's the problem. I have this problem right now. I want your guys' take on this. Every episode I'm excited about, and I always feel like it's going to be a really good one. And so I feel like I've just become like a copy paste of like, this is a great episode this week. This is going to be a lot of fun. What do I do about that?
Well, maybe that means you're the captain of an amazing show. I don't know if that's a problem.
You got it. You got it. This is a very fun one though. Like there was an article written on ThePylonShow.com that Max here, a new guest, welcome Max, wrote, and we are going to be talking about it. It's about 6 workers versus 12 workers. We're not going to get into it quite yet though. Let me quickly introduce our guests, and then we will get into this week in StarCraft. Of course, back for his 92nd show out of 80 episodes. Nero, how you doing?
Fantastic. Feeling great. I'm glad to be on for this topic in particular. And for people who are foaming at the mouth and worried that no one is going to be pushing for the 12 workers side of things, I will be representing you tonight.
Excellent. Perfect. We also have Brown Bear. Brown Bear, this has to be your 3rd or 4th episode at least. How are you doing here?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm excited to be. I think it's going to be a very good discussion. Very excited.
Yeah, I think so as well. Negative Zero, welcome back. We had you on for the previous map making episode, and you had a nice little write-up about his article as well. How are you doing here today?
All right, I'm back. Yeah, second time on the show. I've actually got a decent mic, I think. If I don't, please spam in the chat and let me know. Yeah, I'm going to be on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, advocating for crazy crackpot theories that map makers have come up with over the years.
Excellent. I heard you hate Terran, so that's always something I need on each episode.
Well,
thank you for coming by. Your mic does sound a hell of a lot better than last time. There's no question there. And then we have Max. Max, you are the creator of TerranCraft.com and write basically everything that goes on over there. And this is your first time on the show. I'm glad to finally have you on after 80 episodes. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, let people know about what you do and who you are?
All right. So I'm Max. I'm a behavioral scientist. The guy behind TerranCraft, the guy who kind of put the community to, fight against each other. So that's me.
Excellent. All right. So a very good lineup for anyone that wants to catch up on the articles. I definitely suggest you go check out TerranCraft.com and maybe listen to the episode after you read some of them, because you're going to be a little bit more filled in. But we'll go over what was written, of course, because that's what we're talking about. But first, let me thank our sponsors. Of course, our main one, Patreon. This is why and how the show even exists. So a big thanks to everyone who has supported over time. Patreon.com/ThePylonShow. If you like The Pylon Show and StarCraft and all these good things, this is how you can show your support. If not, no problem. But this also gives you some great benefits, such as asking shows that we will answer at the end. We go through every single question from our Patreon members. So definitely check it out. Again, patreon.com/ThePylonShow. And of course, if you are someone who is subscribing through the Patreon and you want to leave a question, you go to ThePylonShow.com. We have a little button up top. We also have a little button called the Nexus, and that is going to bring you to our brand new forums. ThePylonShow.com has absolutely everything that you would want for the Pylon Show. It's got all of the episodes, it's got all the links to the podcast forums, YouTube videos, the show notes, everything that you could imagine. So check that out. Also, we have Matcherino, matcherino.com/ThePylonShow. We have some new swag there if you want to check it out. And hey, I even have one today. Look at this. Beautiful, awesome, amazing mug. It's me with a funny hat on. And yeah, it says The Pylon Show on one end. Anyways, if you are interested in supporting in that way, definitely check it out on matcherino.com/ThePylonShow. And of course, hook up your account and hit that contribute button, because this is a way that we invent free money over at matcherino.com. If you simply type in the word cherry under contribute, you'll give us $1. And if all of you do that, we'll be rich, and that'll be awesome. So check that out. All right. So on to this week in StarCraft. Of course, once again, this is within the show notes. If I say anything as I go over it that you are very interested in and want to learn more, just check it out. You can go to thepylonshow.com, click on the show notes, or anywhere that you're watching or listening to The Pylon Show. And yeah, you can get that information. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to page number 3, our upcoming events. Of course, the ESL Open Cups, Olimo League, TL Net Map Contest 14 tournament phase, and Africa World, a 2vs2 tournament coming up. We'll talk more about all that in a moment here. Moving forward, the ESL Open Cups. We have a big list of those for you through the 16th. Of course, Asia, Europe, and Americas are all there. They are cast by just about everyone in the world. Wardy, Base Trade, Take, O Gaming, Indie, Crank, Maynard, Fear Dragon, Horace, Vincent, Calterin, Mint Crystal, Rocklets TV, and Bel Air are all casting it. Go play, go watch, go enjoy. A lot of great tournaments going on. Of course, also Olimo League, number 180 community tournaments on the Korean server. And look at that. Solar defeated Estrella 3-2. Zest defeated Sioux 4-3 in the January finals. Just an absolutely fantastic tournament. And if you want to support that and get a great replay pack, this is something I've been doing forever. Go over to patreon.com/Olimoly. It is a righteous and just cause. Right.
Those
we also
are
have the
replays that I study on a regular basis too. It's super convenient. Yeah. The posts are really regular. If you pledge on Patreon, you get a nice email whenever those are live, and it's always going to be on the current patch. And it's helped me a ton for figuring out the current ZVP meta.
Seriously, it is so awesome. Like it used to be $15 for the replay pack on Patreon, and I was like, yeah, that is a great deal. And now it's only $5, and I'm like, oh, amazing. And Olimoly is super on top of getting that replay pack out. It's just like such a nice morning. You know, you come with your cup of coffee to the computer, you're like, I wonder what I'll do today. And then you check, and there's this wonderful post with all these wonderful replays to check out. All right, moving forward, we have the TL Net Map Contest 14. The judging phase is the 3rd of February through 9th of February. Tournament phase, 11th of February through 16th. Iteration phase, 17th through 23rd. And public voting phase, 24th through 1st of March. And Wardy will do the tournament, I guess. -0 being a map maker. Do you have any maps in the race? Do you have anything you want to say about the map contest?
Yeah, I do. Well, let's see. Well, the judges have been listening to the general feedback of the player population, the pros, I guess. We are trying to bring map sizes down a little bit. They reduced the size of the macro map category, the rush distances, the recommended rush distances, and the playable bounds. Like, obviously, they're not like strict rules, but yeah, they're trying to encourage people to lower that a little bit. They're bringing back the rush category, so yeah, overall slight decrease of map sizes. And there's also a new challenge category getting added, where the opposite of the inhibitor zones, they are adding acceleration zones.
I'm excited to see how that works out in games.
They're proving to be a little harder to use, I guess. Like a very small speed boost through a certain area is a little less impactful than getting slowed in like a tight choke or something like that. But yeah, I think
it's
there's
actually
interesting.
Happening?
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about this like a year and a half ago on the Pylon Show of like speed jump ramps and stuff?
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening, man.
The inhibitor zones they're red now, and then the green ones, they're acceleration zones. So
man.
Oh, we're switching that around. That's really going to surprise a few people that don't hear about that ahead of time.
Ruined quite a few people's like map color schemes too in the process, but you know.
Are there any banana peels that you can slip on? Your unit?
In a year or two, no doubt. I'm going to go ahead and give all the map makers out there a great idea. Have just a tiny strip that goes right through the center of the map, so that like suddenly you get your Hellions in a line, you just zip them across the map. That would be so cool to watch. It's like they get into the slipstream or something.
Yeah, I've seen a couple maps on there that are kind of similar to that, where it's like accelerator zones like straight down the rush path, and then the others are left wide open. So
I love it. That's awesome. All right, guys, keep track of the Team Liquid map contest. This is more important than you know.
I would also say,
we also have
sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
I mentioned this last time on the show. If you want to give feedback for the maps, and try to, I guess, get your influence out there. The best time to do that is after 16 finalists have been announced and they're playing the tournament. You can watch those. Probably like 7 or 8 of those 16 are guaranteed to go on the ladder eventually. So you've got it nice and narrowed down for you. These are the maps that we would like your feedback on, and we'd like to improve them. So yeah,
That's great.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, maybe we can do an extra Pylon Show episode on something like that when the maps get narrowed down a little bit more, help drive some traffic over there. But excellent stuff, guys. Check out teamliquid.net for that. Up next, we have Afrika World. Get hyped for 2 vs 2, February 8th at 8 a.m. PST. There's going to be a 2 vs 2 tournament cast by Falcon, Paladin, and Laughing Games. The Thermal Goblin as a team, Clem a Laser as a team, Hearthstone Soul as a team, and BC Cutie and Max Pax as a team. This is the type of thing you don't see all that often, some competitive 2 vs 2. So definitely check that out. It's over on AfrikaTV.com. All right, this week in StarCraft. ESL Cup Korea, we had Solar over Cure 3-0 in the finals. Oh, look at that. Sort of made it to the top 4. Pretty sick. Yeah, check that out. It was cast by Base Trade. We also have the ESL Cup EU, another victory for Hero Marine, 3-0 over Mana, cast by Wardy. Go check out those VODs. And then the NA, Parting over Bly, 3-1. Looks like Scarlet unable to win this one, but did win number 3 with a 3-2 over Parting. And this one cast by Maynard, so go check that out. All right, we also have the Wardy 2020. Ragnarok defeated Cure 4-0 in the finals. And that was a big prize pool cast by Wardy and Zombie Grub. Go check it out on Wardy's Twitch. We also have the Wardy TV Team League Season 9. Looks like Team Lao Power from China defeated the Roddy Boys 4-3 as the playoffs begin. Fantastic Five, Chill Gaming, Team Liquid, and MKers all remain. We also have the subscribe to youtube.com/Hearthstone Cup. Wow, that's a great name. Laser defeated Rainer 3-0. 35 different players took part, $100 on the EU server, with first place $75, second place $25. Congrats to a Laser. And then we have the second No Gamer Left Behind tournament. Nero, didn't you win the first one of these?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the second one here?
Yeah, the second one I played zoomed in again, but also with no sound and Jimothy mask on. Jimothy is a character of my stream. He's kind of the absent-minded professor sort of character where he tries to connect all the different generations, the boomers, the zoomers, the millennials, everybody deserves to play games and enjoy StarCraft. And No Gamer Left Behind is awesome. The money that we raised goes directly to getting controllers for people with disabilities who want to play video games. So I had a whole bunch of fun streaming and playing this with all of them. Playing StarCraft zoomed in is very exciting. It's a different perspective. The units look very cool. I actually enjoy playing the game that way. But there was a great set of guests, and I had a blast doing it.
That's really cool. And so, wait, you won the second one as well?
Yes.
Damn. You're
Jimothy is a beast.
Yeah.
The plaque for this one is actually going to say Jimothy on it instead of Nero. So we can have next to each other. The joke is that he's my grandfather.
Excellent. Yeah. Keeping it in the family. All right. Do you know where people check out the VOD? So they just check it on your channel, for instance?
Yeah, it's on my channel. I'll link the stream where it was hosted. It's DAW Station. He plays StarCraft with one hand at a diamond level as a random player. He has a really cool mouse that it's the normal mouse, and then there's like 2 small keyboards on either side of it. So he can press a lot of his hotkeys right next to his mouse. It's really badass.
Sick. Very cool.
Follow.
All right. Yeah, check that out, everybody. Then we have the Grand Platypus Open. Miomeka took down Gogo Joey in the finals 3-1. And this plays on Sundays at 4 p.m. KST. So check that out on the Cranky Ducklings Twitch channel. We also have Battle for America's Cham 3-1 over Peely Peely in the finals. Yeah, and that was number 2 of that. So check it out. Another OSC tournament. We have the Passion Craft Sunday Showdown. Poppy 3-1 over King Cobra. And last week, Terran defeated Starkiller 3-0 in the finals there. This is in cooperation again with OSC, so you can check it out over on their site and that Discord. Then we have the Shirshadi Open. Puck ended up winning 3-1 over Spear. And yeah, it looks like Juggernaut Jason won number 2, 2-1 over Spear. Poor Spear, just sitting here getting second places. You can check this out over on twitch.tv/Shirshadi. And we have American Thunder League Season 1. Future ended up beating Disc 4-0 in the finals of that bracket, I guess, and then played Special in the actual championship match. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened, but Future won that 4-0 over Special. Wow. Really, really coming up at this point. We also have the Alpha X Junior Championship Season 2. Exo Striker 4-1 over Murtillo. You can check this tournament out. It's by the Alpha X folks, and it is for players that I believe are under 15 years old, or maybe it's 15 years old and under. Really showing kind of the future of this game. We also have E-Gaming 2vs2 Cup 2. I believe Sugar put this one on. Future and Silky defeated Antis and Zonda 3-0 there in the finals, and take that one home. You can check it out on twitch.tv/ChickenManSC. We also have 2020 NA Apprentice Season 1. This is on Twitch TV/Creighton Olsen, you know, the Ball GSL guy. Quite a strong caster as well. Looks like he has Prototype, Starkiller, Semper, and Raze advancing this week. And this will be going forward with the NA players. So check that out over on his stream. We also have Connector Day 2020. The Gladiator defeated Primus Dexia 3-1. And this was a StarCraft LAN event held in Costa Rica. A Brood War tournament on Saturday and a StarCraft 2 tournament on Sunday, each with a prize of $150. Quebec StarCraft League 7th edition. Semper, to no one's surprise, ends up winning 3-0 in the finals over Effecto. And this was at Meltdown Montreal with a prize of $150. You can check it out over on PvP's channel, root_PvP. We also have the Singapore StarCraft 2 online tournament. Seiko 4-2 over Lobo in the finals. And the stream was at, I think that's the Red Gunner guy's stream. So check that out. We also have La Espira 2vs2 tournament. Raza and Xeons 3-2 over Bombilla and Omega. Congratulations. And Legacy Weekly Japan. Rilakuma over Nauticon 2-0 in the finals of this one. If you're in Japan, you can check that one out. The Pizza Pie Bi-Weekly Season 3. Now we're getting to the real news here. Yes. Wait a minute. Starkiller is finally won another pizza after so long. It's been over 1 year since he won the pizza tournament. And now he's up to 21.
Lost sleep over that. I feel like I can finally rest easy knowing that he's the champion of the pizza again.
That's really good. So he's now won 21 pizzas. Future, a distant second place with 12 pizzas. The only person that has any chance of ever catching up. But congrats to Starkiller for once again taking back his pizza throne. You can check this out if you want. It's a bi-weekly tournament for a pizza. All right, we have the World WESG 2019/2020. WESG has canceled the APAC finals in Macau due to the coronavirus. A lot of things actually are getting canceled and pushed back because of this. And WESG, no big surprise, they have done so as well. The global finals, it says they originally scheduled for March 16th and 17th, 2020 in Chongqing, China. I don't know if they actually said yet if they are postponing or moving that. That's a ways out, so I guess we'll hear about that in the future and let you guys know. All right, we also have the GSL Super Tournament for 2020, which has also been pushed back due to coronavirus. Everyone's being very, very careful about this out here. So yeah, it's going to be in March. I think I have the dates, but you guys don't. But yeah, it'll come. Sorry about that.
Let me wear my mask.
I know, right? I wear a mask when I leave the house right now as well. Everyone is wearing a mask. It's like when I go on the subway, it's 90% plus people are wearing masks and just like standing very still by themselves. All right, Wordy TV Team League Map Contest Tournament 6. We already kind of talking about this as it comes up. Wordy will be the one hosting that tournament. We also have the CEA Corporate Esports Association. A registration for the spring 2020 season is open, and it closes actually in just over a week, in 8 days. So this is your second last Pylon Show warning that it is closing. If you work for a company and want to play StarCraft on a team with them, check out cea.gg. All right, Fear Dragon presents Want to play StarCraft without your hands. For you guys who missed it, he made a YouTube video of something he's been programming where he controls StarCraft with his mind, or more with his eyes and voice commands, which I guess your mind really controls everything, even your hands when you think about it. But it's very, very cool. Go check out Fear Dragon's Twitter and his videos that he tweeted out. It is super duper neat. All right, Kung Fu Cup 2019, number 4 will be February 6th. I guess that's technically 2020. Cast by Wordy, of course. Check it out over on his channel. We also have the Infinity Gaming Cool Clip Contest. We have a lot of tournaments. Like, I know we normally do, but this feels like it's more tournaments than normal this week so far. I just want to throw that out there. The Infinity Gaming Cool Clip Contest. This is sponsored by Vite Ramen. All right. $100 for your highlights. Check it out. Twitter.com/LXG Pro or IXG Pro. I don't know. StarCraft 2 Amateur Championship. Registration closes on February 14th, and play will start on February 17th. So this is a European tournament, and it's for amateur players. They have all sorts of different bracketing for how good you are. You can check it out. They have a Discord server as well. Check out the show notes if you're interested. We also have the 2020 Winterland on February 15th, and this is going to be way out in the middle of nowhere, some island off the coast of Canada. Which island is that again? Oh, it's going to be in Halifax. Okay. Yeah, if you live around Halifax, you definitely want to go to this. Support your local scene. All right, bits of code. What makes a champion bot? An interview with Micro Machine and Micro Machine creators Raph and Unusual. So this is over on eschamp.com. We've been talking a lot about the various bots around, and if you're interested in StarCraft 2 bots, eschamp.com is definitely where you want to go. They have this interview there. Epic Land 29, the 21st through 23rd of February. If you are in the UK, you definitely want to go play this. I just saw Risky last week in Korea, so I don't know if he's going to be there. Maybe you can win. Check out epicland.co.uk. La Espira Podcast, episode 9 is now available. If you speak Spanish and you're watching this, thank you. But you might want to watch that one. I don't know. Whatever language you're more comfortable with. Jim Rising is over there and talking with Horace and Demon Swap, so check that out. All right, this week in Brood War, the Titanus Del Ring Nation Wars are wrapping up. Norway takes out USA 3-2 in the playoffs as Germany 4-1s Europe. Finals are going to take place on February 22nd. We also have the Brood War G's Weekly, run by the wonderful Russian people over there. Parfume took out Scan in the finals 1-0. Looks like DeWalt and Dandy both made it into those semis. And congrats to them. We also have Bombastic Star League Season 8. It looks like we are in the top 4 at this point. Look at that. Dandy versus Gorinich and TT1 against Boneth. So some sick matches coming up. Casted, of course, by Rapid, Nyokin, and Ziggy, and Zero. Check it out over on Zero's Twitch channel. We also have Brood War Clan League. This is Season 49, the oldest clan league in the whole wide world as far as I know. Nasa defeated IRKA, and Soul defeated DM. The Caster Muse Star League Season 2 wrapped up. Zero ended up winning over Shine in the finals, with Piano getting third place. Snow getting third place over Piano. You can check that out. Caster Muse now has a new Twitter and a YouTube where you can watch those VODs. Then we have Hazley's Nut Cup number 1. It looks like Dandy ended up winning 2-1 over Ariador. I guess he won a giant bag of hazelnuts. I wonder if that's going to get through customs into Peru. We have At You, Shamtu's tournament. SPX took out True Touch 2-1 in the finals. Looks like Eon Zerg and Casper both made top 4 as well. A bunch of the best players in the foreign scene competing. And I believe this week he did not cast it because he was sick or something. But anyways, check it out, Shamtu's tournament. We also have the Africa TV StarCraft League Season 9. All the qualifiers took place last weekend. And we actually have the most Terrans we've ever had in the ASL. So this is going to be an excellent season because that's what we really want is a bunch of TVTs. So many strong players, including Flash playing again, even though he already announced that he wouldn't play. So excellent to see. See if he can win giant tournament number 11. We also have the rookie StarCraft League 3. A StarCraft Brood War tournament is going on. MMR has to be below 1,400. So apparently you can't play Protoss in this tournament. Check out challenge.com for the sign up. We also have Coach Pupil League, number 5. This is one of the best ways to learn Brood War if you are interested in learning. Basically, it pairs up players that are not that good with players that are really good that are donating their time to teach you how to play. This is a fantastic initiative, and you really want to be involved. So many people within the foreign scene are involved, including Kix, Shamtu, Melty. Some of the amazing coaches are Cadenzi, Hortos, Father, Armada, and Future. These are all well-known players, so you definitely do want to check that out. And then we have the Russian Cyber Cup 2020. This is the replacement to Corrupted Cup, and they've announced a bunch of the qualification criteria. Yeah, you can sign up. I believe the qualifiers all start in May, but the ladder is starting up pretty soon to qualify for the qualifiers. So that is an offline event for the very best of the non-Korean scene. Very exciting tournament. And that is that. Oh my God, that was a long this week in StarCraft this week. Whew. All right.
Are you saying that StarCraft is not a dead game in 2020?
To be honest, I need more water, man. I wish it was a little bit deader. Then this week in StarCraft wouldn't be so long. But unfortunately, we have so many tournaments. And the thing is, it's not just tournaments for pros. Like, I feel like a third of the things I read there were like bracketed for people. You know, so it's like, oh, you're this level, perfect. We have the league for you here, which is cool. It's like much more about inclusivity. Whereas like 10 years ago, it's like if you weren't one of the best players in the world, there was no point.
Oh, you're hungry? We have 2 tournaments for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's whatever your need is. That's true. There were 2 tournaments that gave away food this week.
Hey, I'm a StarCraft player, and I really could use a pizza today. Is there a tournament for me? Actually, yes.
I know. We're gonna have
you
to
win
start
that enough
searching
times in a row, though. It starts to become counterproductive. You know?
Yeah.
I'm almost out of shampoo. Are there any tournaments this week where I can win a bottle of shampoo? You know? Oh my God. Okay. So let me set the stage here for what we'll be talking about today. So basically, Max, your website, terrancraft.com, you put together some nicely written articles that you put a lot of time and effort into. And you recently released one. And the gist of it is about 6 workers versus 12. Obviously, we moved up after Heart of the Swarm from the 6 worker starts to a 12 worker start, which theoretically is being used to speed up the game a little bit. But you argue about some unintended consequences within this change. Could you kind of summarize for us some of the things that you talked about in your article for people that haven't had the time to read it yet?
All right. So just want to pre-phrase in some manner. It's not about Heart of the Swarm versus Legacy of the Void, right? It's about 6 workers, 12 workers. So with that in mind, I think Legacy was a better game. Just a matter of like, hey, like, you know, if we move 6 workers, 12 workers, what are some of the consequences that we may not have considered about? So what I observed is that if we change workers, the early game is shortened. The resource ratio at the start is different. Resource ratio is referring to mineral to gas. And then we have a faster worker saturation, whereby that's based on the assumption that, you know, people have this rough idea of what's optimal number of workers and the rest of the supply is going to dump into the army. So these are general observations, and based on these observations, I kind of argue that there are some byproducts that are negative to the enjoyment of the game in certain manner, right? And the gist of it is, it kind of dampen the strategy element a little bit, right? And that includes like lowering the cost of lowering the opportunity cost of making strategy decisions, less discriminating early game choices, and lastly is about the interaction between different strategies, different builds become relatively shallow.
Yeah, I think that's quite a good summary of your article. Of course, we can go over some of the finer points as well. And of course, these other three guests, you actually invited, from all different viewpoints as well. It's we have the map maker -0. We have the very high level player in Nero, also a Zerg player, who some of you guys think that might be benefited more from the 12 workers. And then we have Brown Bear, who's just kind of known for having well thought out and well written thoughts on RTS stuff, an old champion from Age of Empires, who's a strong StarCraft 2 player at this point. But so these guys all read your article ahead of time and kind of submitted their own little response articles that are all on TerranCraft.com. Again, anyone who doesn't visit TerranCraft.com probably should go check it out. Some really good stuff there. So I'd love to just maybe get the gist of all of your guys' ideas, and then we can kind of dive into the finer points. Brown Bear, do you want to start us off with what your kind of response and thoughts on the article was?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I read Max's article, I was largely in favor of the 12-worker start. I felt like it was an integral part of Legacy. After I read Max's article and kind of thought about it, I thought that I started leaning more towards the 6-worker start because I thought he made some really interesting arguments. But then I read the other commentary responses from Neuro and -0. Then I started wondering, I started leaning back towards 12 workers. So I've kind of gone back and forth on this. In my individual response, kind of the things I focused on, there's an idea that Max presents that you have less discriminating early game choices with 12 workers. And I feel like in Legacy, it's you make the same level of discrimination. It's just very subtle. It's very fast. It's on a very compressed timeline. So there is a difference between building your 3rd CC first versus your 2nd and 3rd barracks first, or flipping those around. But it occurs over a very short timeline. And the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is that in general in strategy games, strategic variety tends to go down. So the trajectory of strategic variety from one point in time to another point in time kind of has to be considered in that light, because you would expect variety to go down no matter what.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the summary. Nero, do you want to summarize what your stance was within your article?
Yes, to give some indication of my bias, I'm a macro Zerg player where I really like having 3 to 4 to 5 bases saturated. I like to creep the whole map and play big macro games with tons of stuff and remaxing. And that's really the stage of StarCraft 2 that I love the most. So for me, this question was an easy answer for me. The 12 worker start basically gets the match up to speed faster. And the theme of what I wanted to bring to the table in the discussion tonight is about how much raw speed and athleticism is in a StarCraft player. That's one of the most beautiful aspects of the game. And for my personal bias, I think I prefer the matches where you feel like you got to play as fast as you could. Your opponent did the same. And it feels like almost a fighting game or a boxing match, but you're juggling a lot of different pieces that are moving very fast. Your accuracy is very important. Your precision, your timing is very important. The aspect of crafting very specific builds that surprise your opponent and catch them off guard, that's never really been my go-to for approaching the game. I can see the beauty in that too, but the way that I've described it with regards to player archetypes is some people like to approach StarCraft as a wizard, where you're trying to get some amazing and mysterious spell that other people can't even comprehend. And you have some wall off and there's a mystery behind it. And then something just emerges from your base and it catches your opponent off guard and they're like, oh, what the fuck is this? And then they die. Versus the barbarian, which is how I prefer to play, where I get my pieces where I can be active and I want to be exchanging blows, punching and dodging and fighting with my opponent, taking trades, being active with harassment while macroing behind it. That's where I really like to thrive. And I wouldn't really say that one is necessarily correct. And this, in a way, this conversation brings up the question of, what are we trying to get out of RTS? What do we love about RTS? What do we love about StarCraft 2? How has StarCraft 2 changed? And basically, how can we have the best set of choices for players to find the game that works for them? Because I would agree fully that Legacy of the Void is very fast, and those early game decisions from 6 to 12 being removed, I like that. But some people like it developing in more of a, I would say, slower way at the beginning, where those decisions matter more, and that's okay. It comes down to a preference, basically.
Yeah, and it's very cool. You kind of took a different approach when you were responding. I just want to make this clear for people that don't see the connection between what Nero's saying and the actual article. Is a big part of the article had to do with how Legacy of the Void makes the game a bit more mechanical, which is kind of where Nero's going with it and talking about it. But we'll get more into that in just a second. Negative Zero, do you want to summarize for us what your response article was?
All right. Well, I kind of wrote 3 mini articles in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I'll just kind of skim over. It's something that I would wager is true, but I'm not a high enough level player to be able to quantifiably justify it. So I said that I think Zerg has likely benefited the most from the 12 worker start because other races depend on pressuring them to keep them in check, and you simply just have less time to do that. Like your units still have all the same capabilities; they still kill workers at the same speed, but like Zerg is just able to expand, I guess, exponentially faster. So that was one of mine. And then later on I focused a lot more on the impact of map design, where he said that like Legacy of the Void has essentially mapped out more of the strategy and enabled more options from each build that you do. And so this has had the effect of, well, mapping out the game further, and at the same time that will actually map out map design further. And so maps have gotten a lot more standardized as the game has progressed over the years and as games are expected to go longer and longer. So like earlier on back in Wings of Liberty, you were really only working on the first like 1 or 2 bases. That was what you were considered standard, and then options, I guess, diverged a lot more from there. But in modern Legacy of the Void games, you're expected to go up to like 5 or 6 bases per map. And so the base layouts in general reflect that, where you have like a series of bases that are all just laid out in an easy to take line, as opposed to later game bases being more difficult. So you have that where I guess the average standard of macro has gotten a little higher, where you have that expectation now. But to counteract that that rapid economic expansion, to prevent things from spiraling out of control too much, maps have gotten and are still continuing to get smaller. I brought up examples from Heart of the Swarm, like Altruism, Stronghold, and Deadwing, and even earlier Legacy of the Void maps like Dusk Towers. Those would all be pretty imbalanced in the modern state of StarCraft 2, and we're still trying to correct for that. We're still trying to bring down those sizes a little bit. Same thing happened to 4-player maps. They've kind of been, they're kind of past their prime now. Like they're too big, they're too macro heavy, and also the faster worker start and the lack of time for scouting has just made it too coin flippy. Like some of the rushes hit now before you have the chance to get to the third base to scout the third main. I mean, so yeah, like innovation in map design has gone down a little bit, and I don't think that'll be as much of a concern to most people as it is to map makers. But I mean, to us, it's a little frustrating, I guess. There's still a lot of options we have, but like the formula for what we do has expanded to cover more of the map, I suppose.
Okay.
There's more restrictions. And then the third part that I talked about it's kind of going back in a history lesson to economic discussions that we've had throughout the history of StarCraft 2 and some of the other economic models that have been proposed. And so basically what I'm saying is, I don't think we should go necessarily back to a 6-worker start. I think there are other models that are available where you can have a faster start to the game, but for each base, the rate of economic growth will slow down as you add more workers. So there are diminishing returns at each base locations, and I think that would help provide a better economic model for the entire game. The experiments that were done in the past that I'm talking about, you might remember them as the double harvesting. The Team Liquid Strategy team wrote an article called the Treatise on the Economy, Treatise on the Economy of StarCraft 2. That's what it's called. And it was basically proposing, this model where worker mining is accelerated initially. Each worker mines faster. I won't get into the exact mechanics of how this works. You can look it up yourself.
I remember this article actually. Yeah. Go ahead.
So basically, each worker will mine slightly faster off the mineral patch, but 2 workers will not be able to mine efficiently off the same patch. The second one will have to wait a little bit. It'll lose efficiency. And so what this does is it starts to level off the mining curve at 8 workers as opposed to 16 as it currently does. This would be a fairly simple change to make to the game. It's something that you can't do precisely well in the editor, but I think Blizzard would be able to come up with, I guess, a more optimized solution by modifying their own engine. So yeah, you can do that. And what that'll do is it allows you to take expansions and to use more of the map and to grow more and to have more of this multitasking that people are trying to achieve with Legacy of the Void. And also it'll achieve this faster start with the similar to the 12 workers, because you do accelerate the initial rate of mining. So it solves those issues, but you don't get this out of control economy scaling, because the rate starts to slow down after 8 workers at each base instead of 16. And it also encourages you to take further expansion on the map without having to build so many workers per base. Because if you have 16 workers, both players have 16 workers, you do actually get a benefit from taking that second base already, as opposed to having the same saturation, whether you're on 1 or 2. I think that might have been maybe a little too complex of an explanation to begin with, but just let me know if you have any questions. If you want a more simplified version.
I would contest one point, if I may, about the 12 worker start benefiting Zerg. One thing that I try to emphasize a whole bunch is the way that Terran, Zerg, and Protoss hit power spikes as their economy is building up. So Zerg has the inject as their unique mechanic. Protoss has Chrono Boost, and Terran has the Mule. And a lot of the matchups are based around when those spikes hit and how you leverage your spike against the other race. And so for Terran versus Zerg, as their mules hit, they usually have either Hellions or Marines, and they try to stab at the Zerg to keep their economy in check and force units out of them, as Zerg is rushing toward their power spike of 3 injected bases and 3 healthy saturated bases. Protoss as well, a big part of why they do pressure, all-ins, and timings off 2 bases is because they do produce a whole bunch of probes leading up to the 2-base saturation point. And I think that's cool and interesting, and that makes the 3 feel unique and asymmetrically balanced.
I just think
definitely
there is the potential that when you speed up all of this too, what I mentioned is when you have a narrow window in there to do the damage, it makes each action more significant. So every mistake will cost more, essentially. And I think that might be detrimental to that style of an extended slugfest that you might have been going for.
I feel like the concept of power spikes is a really useful one for thinking about this topic, because like the way that I started thinking about it after I read all the responses was just kind of trying to compare the player's expected income against the player's expected expenditures. And one of the things that Negative Zero pointed out is that increasing the number of starting workers doesn't change, how long units take to construct, how long upgrades take to research. So you kind of have these two extremes where if your income is balanced to be too low relative to the amount of money and time you have to spend researching things, you kind of get into this pathological state where people are incentivized to do these very, very sharp builds. It's a lot of cheeses, a lot of build order wins. Then on the flip side, and so that's kind of like a form of a power spike. And then on the flip side, if your income is balanced to be too high relative to your expenditures, you kind of reduce the meaningfulness of strategic choices because you kind of flatten out some of those power spikes. You're kind of just doing everything at once. So I think the discussion kind of does come down to like, what's the right balance? What produces the right balance of between income and expenditures? And I think like the power spikes idea is one of the reasons I think that balancing the income too low relative to expenditures can create problems for the meta.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many different topics here. So guys, please butt in at any time and say anything that comes to mind, because I know if I'm driving everything, I'm going to forget and miss out on a whole bunch of these interesting points. But I think a good point to kind of like start off and build from is a sizable part of the original article, Max, you talk about how the differentiation of build orders and early game choices is less with 12 workers than 6. So I'd love to just kind of start that off and talk about what those things mean. And actually, you said something very interesting, Negative Zero, that I hadn't thought of, but is definitely very related, is this seems to have a lot to do with why 4-player maps may have gone away completely as well. I don't know. I guess we can expand on that. But Max, if you could tell us a little bit about the less strategic variation and meaningful choices early on due to this.
Right. So in the first place, right, it's more qualitative and quantitative, because like, I say one strategy different than the other one, you must have a very meaningful way to categorize this strategy A, this strategy B, right? So that's a very important point. And a lot of argument in the community is, it goes back down to these definitions. Hey, like, it's A and B are different, but just subtle, like, you plebs don't see the subtle difference. And other people, like, especially my friends who don't play the game, but they watch it, they like it. They were like, they look the same to me. The strategy are the same. They do the same thing every game, but it's just the same to me. So I think that's where I kind of got a bit of idea how it get around, like, the perspective of maybe the knowledge of the game affects how the strategy in StarCraft. So you're saying in my article, I kind of say, like, the strategy is kind of get affected, things being the same. I kind of don't look at it in a dichotomous manner. It's more of a spectrum, like, things getting more and more closer to each other in a sense. So, one of the example I kind of like to use is like having using Terra, for example, barracks expand, right? When barracks expand, do you take the gas before the barracks or the gas after the barracks, right? In Legacy Void, strategy-wise, it's quite comparable. You just have 50 more gas and kind of go back to the same thing. But you look at how the swarm, like getting gas first is a very different thing. It leads to different like elements. Like, if you get gas first, you probably really expand later. You focus on your tech. So the strategy behind it is like, hey, what can I make use of the tech that you invest in to get a return of it, right? So I delay my economy. So using the tech to affect opponents, say expand earlier. Maybe I can kill them workers, for example, to balance it back, right? So there's a bit of more personality in terms of how you pick the strategy you're going to play. But in Legacy of Void, yes, getting gas first does have a bit of difference. I kind of read many articles about a lot of subtle way in terms of, like, counting opponents opening and so on and so forth. But especially for someone who do not play the game but like watching the game, but like, I can't even tell the difference. That's what they tell me, right? And I don't rather ask them, they don't think there's a difference. I would probe them, hey, let's look at these two games. What do you think are differences? And then I realized they can't even identify it, right? So there's a big issues, and like all these average viewers are the big part of the community, right? Like, how we design a game, like, is it better? Like, anything about quite a number of stakeholders here. So there's one I want to talk about in terms of like, the strategy elements kind of like becoming less obvious in a sense, but in my words, it's kind of like, dampened. And in that sense, because it's quicker at the same time, you need to do more things at the same time, earlier and so on, right? So it kind of requires a higher level of mechanics for things to matter, for strategy to be executed, right? So that's why I kind of come down to the argument that the selecting worker change kind of dampen the strategy differences in a sense, in like, how you perceive it, the interaction of things and the implications. At the same time, it heightened the importance of mechanics. Of course, those are interrelated, but it's the same point. And that's where I think like Neo bring a good point, like, people prefer different things. Some like to like, outmuscle their opponent with mechanics. Some like, being more thinking about strategy, about like making moves, how it goes around.
Okay, yeah, the mechanics thing is a very interesting point that we'll jump to pretty soon here. But on specifically the 6 workers versus 12, one of the feedbacks or the criticisms or whatever you want to call it that I've heard from a lot of pros on this is that like if you move it up to 12 workers, it removes a lot of more of the sharp build order wins that we had in the early game. This is something Drogo messaged me about. I just saw Scarlett talking about it in the chat as well. And that's definitely one difference that I see between, I play a lot of StarCraft 1 and commentate both games and watch both games a lot. And certainly that's something that exists in Brood War that doesn't exist as much in StarCraft 2, where you can take these gigantic gambles early on, where it adds a little bit of volatility. So that's like a strategic thing that we are missing in StarCraft 2 to a certain degree. Now, whether that's good or bad, I think that there's some debate. I think as a player, you get frustrated when someone cuts their entire economy to put gateways in your base or something, whereas that doesn't really work in StarCraft 2. That might be something that can work in StarCraft 1 or maybe 6 workers StarCraft 2, which I think can be, in my opinion, I think that this can be something that's exciting for fans because it does add a bit of volatility. It's like, oh my God, he beat someone better than him and did this ballsy strategy. But at the same time, as a player or as a professional competing and stuff, I can see how that's, I scream at my PC every time someone puts 2 barracks in my base, But what do you guys think about as far as the very early part that I was talking about there?
One really a core aspect of this whole discussion is what it means to have a satisfying match where you feel like you as a competitor, if you won, you feel like you earned it. And if you lost, you feel like your opponent earned it. That's something that people have different opinions on. But one of the things that is widely shared among pro gamers is a build order loss is one of the most unsatisfying ways to lose, where you went for a build that's going to work most of the time and your opponent did something that's not going to work most of the time, but it hard countered how you opened and you ended up losing. That's really not fun. If someone meets you in the field of battle and they fight and they fight and they fight over the course of multiple battles, and then you end up losing, you feel a sense of satisfaction that you were actually bested. So the Legacy of the Void shift toward 12, I think, removed a lot of those situations where you felt like, well, that was part of that 24% of the time where they went for that build, I spawned over here and then ended up losing. And that sucks because if you're a professional, you've practiced for a really long time, and maybe you've worked on your game flow for the early, the mid, and the late, and then you got a couple build order losses, and then you're out for a few months until your next major tournament. Removing that, I think, is a really, really big plus for the consistency of the better player winning in the series.
I think you bring up a good point in terms of like the perception enjoyment. So it goes back to the idea of attribution of the results. So Neo is saying like, if the build order win kind of give you perception that, it's a bit luck, and that's where things get more debatable. So think about this, right? Let's use a map that has only 2 spawning locations. So your spawn location is well defined. You know where the other player is, right? So there's no luck in a sense of know where the player spawn. So we can play the same game, right? And you have the same hand every single time. You start with the same number of workers, you start with the same race, if you know what opponent race is. So the build that you pick or opening that you pick, right, is based on the same information, things that you know about, right? So when that happens, you choose a build and the other one choose another build, they kind of beat you, right? So it's kind of debatable whether it's called, well, maybe it's luck, right? It goes back down to game design, like, same as rock, paper, scissors. First, a bunch of luck, you know what the three options are, you know, perfect information about it. But in StarCraft, it goes back down to, like, I think Alpha Star be the perfect answer to all these things, right? So as you play more and more game, and you can see in AlphaGo, what happens is that the game get more figured out, right? It's game theory. When it's natural equilibrium, you get back to the same point by, hey, this build is going to increase my likelihood of winning by certain percentage, right? So it's not so much about, like, I choose a build of, like, that is going to get countered by the other build, and like, okay, then maybe you can choose a build that is overall better, and so on and so forth, right? There must be a reason behind this. So it then leads to the next discussion. Is it possible that a game is designed by a rock, paper, scissors, not strategy-wise? So I remember this one episode done by Dana way back. I really can't remember exactly what it's special about, but he mentioned specific things about build or the win. What he said is there's a lot of variation of strength relatively, especially in various kind of map, right? So when you use a certain strategy against the other one or build, should I say, then there's a bit of advantage. If your build is going to lose outright, then perhaps you need to rethink whether it's a good choice to begin with.
Any thoughts, Brown Bear?
Yeah, so I want to offer kind of a different interpretation on what Nura said. Like, I think there are different types of build order losses, right? Like, I think that the type of build order losses that pros don't like are the ones where you couldn't have done anything to prevent yourself from taking a build order loss. Like, before you could scout or what have you, you just lose because you made different decisions than your opponent. Whereas I feel like there are other types of build order losses where, like, your opponent, builds 8 gateways before they take a third, and you scout that and you prepare, and then you hold their all in, and then you beat them, and you feel like, oh, this is really fun, this is really strategic, I really enjoyed this. So I think that what the pros really want is they just want the game to be decided based on skill. They want to feel like if they practice more and they work harder than their opponents, they're going to win, and they're not just going to get bombed out of a tournament by random lucky build orders. So I think I think it's okay to have build order wins and losses. It just needs to be possible for players should have some agency around whether or not they lose to specific build orders.
Yeah, I would pretty much say that you're right about that. Like, if you're a lot better than your opponent, you should be able to pull yourself out of some of those situations. But it does seem like a certain amount of those have gone away. And one thing I want to mention about the like very early game choices, because I think that you outlined it pretty well, Max, that a lot of the more casual fans aren't going to be able to spot the differences in a lot of build orders, whereas the very hardcore fans and players and things, like, I can look at it and be like, oh no, this is completely different because of this one worker, or whatever it might have been. Oh, it was stalker first, now everything is changed. Whereas that's obviously a lot harder to see for like casual fans. So I think there is some question here, because, like, for instance, anyone that's like basically does StarCraft for their life is looking at this and be like, there's still a lot of different choices, and the thing is, there are a lot of choices. It's just is it something that most people can see? Is this something important that would actually make the game better for the general audience? Just kind of a thought.
Well, a lot of the choices have been moved from the early game into the mid game, where things really start to ramp up with speed. And the speed of the game, if we can focus on RTS, I want to focus on the R and the T, which is the real time. Because there are a lot of strategy games out there. There are a lot of games where you can outthink your opponent and make some really clever, meaningful moves and deceive them. With StarCraft, you have people who are banging out 300 to 500 actions per minute. That's something that is very, very mechanical. it's amazing. And a lot of times winning by being faster than your opponent, by punching right and left faster than them, that's amazing. And it's really fun to see. There's a lot of strategy in when and where you decide to attack, how you direct your opponent's vision. So if you poke them in one spot, you force them to pull their camera and address that, and you can punch them somewhere else very quickly after that. Plays like that, I see those as very strategic and very interesting. They aren't quite as deep in the way that you would think about them. Like any person could articulate what just happened. It's a fairly simple maneuver, but if you factor that into all of the different mechanical things that the player has to accomplish for their macro and their tech and all this behind it, it's absolutely incredible. And Legacy of the Void, to me, feels like the most satisfying gaming experience for that reason, where you can really best someone with just so much maneuverability, so much attacking and defending at the same time, that, yeah, slower to me would be more accessible. I think for a lot of people getting into StarCraft, they see the way that Legacy of the Void is played. They're watching the BlizzCon finals and they're like, man, this game is just way too fast for me. I think that is something worth addressing when people are looking at RTS games. Do we want to make an RTS like Legacy of the Void? Or do we want to make an RTS that is more focused on the strategy, the build order variety, and how those decisions impact your standing in the match? Or do we want something that's just a mechanical test between the two players?
Yeah. Oh, Max, go ahead. You were going to say something.
All right. So I think kind of sum up quite a number of broad points that we bring up, right? Especially Neosteelenthusiast. We can kind of conceptualize RTS game like the RT and S, right? In a spectrum, one end you have like running, so it's pure, being the mechanics being fast, right? You win the game. That's on a strategy, you just run forward. On the end, say it's a turn-based game, right? I mean, as long as there's no time limit, there's no mechanics in a sense, right? So if two ends of spectrum and RTS is somewhere along the line, if different RTS having close up one end to the other, right? So what happened now is that going back to my original article, I'm kind of arguing that it's shifted slightly more to the mechanic side of things, right? And if you are those players or viewers kind of lean to one side or the other, your enjoyment is going to shift accordingly, right? I think that's for sure. I think this conversation itself is a good thing to have for future, designer thinking about RTS, like how we're going to design the game, right? So based on this, I read some of the comment along the way, unrelated to StarCraft, is Command and Conquer, I think 5? I can't remember what it is. So basically is they kind of remove a lot of the real-time part in a sense, right? It's kind of semi-turn based. That's what some people call it. Some people don't like it, right? So you can see for real-time strategy, like, how are we going to put it, right? Like this mobile game that's kind of, I can't remember what the game is, kind of like real-time strategy, but there's two lanes thing.
Oh yeah. The Clash of see, right? Whatever. Yeah.
It's less mechanical, right? But still real-time, it leans a lot more to the end, right? So it really goes into a lot of preferences. But one thing that relate to different factor is that both things are interrelated, right? Mechanics and strategy are interrelated. You need the mechanics to execute a strategy. That's extremely important. And one thing that some people are saying that I think is very important for this is that it's fun to talk about strategy. It's not fun to talk about, hey, it's faster, But Neil bring a good point, right?
That's fun for me, though. I will say it's fun for me.
Okay, I'll also bring a point. So you need to go down like, hey, like I need to know when and where to attack, right? That's part of like only attack and multiple points, out multitask opponent, right? So strategy involved as well. So they kind of interlink. But in terms of conversation itself, like at least among my friends, a lot go down back to like, hey, do you see that he did the build and so on and so forth? I still remember this. More than 15 years ago, I was watching a Warcraft 3 commentating, and the guy was saying he's observing like Grubby against a non-pro player. He's like, well, there's nothing to talk about, just control. He literally just keep quiet for a minute and just let the game happen. So that's when, clearly that's not the best way to commentate. I can see where I'm going with this, right? Like, he said, what do you want me to say, So you can see for more casual players or viewers, right? like what sparked interest, what sparked conversations, right? It kind of varies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like there's two conversations happening right now. There's the mechanic one and the strategy one, and we're trying to like kind of link them up. So I thought of like because in your article you mentioned as well that like, you know, there's that kind of famous study that came out that went around the StarCraft scene for a little bit, that as you get older, you like strategically aren't going to, or mechanically, sorry, you're mechanically not going to keep up as well. I personally, through my own experience, don't really agree with that much, just because I think it's more like your attention. You don't care to spend as much time like practicing and everything. Like I'm mechanically better than I've ever been at 36, but that's just because I have time to do it right now as part of my job. But like I think that it's important at the pro level to have a certain base of mechanics, and I think like if you don't have a certain base of mechanics, then I think it's not going to be exciting either. Like for instance, Team Liquid tried to make like a Civilization 6 team or whatever, and that never really became an esport, right? Because it's like maybe too much on the strategy end and not enough on the real time end. But like I think of it this way, right? Like let me think. It's so if you don't have a certain level of base mechanics, you basically can't be a pro, or at least you can't really be very successful. And like I'd like to liken it for a second to like tennis, right? Tennis is actually quite strategic, and but you have to have a certain level of mechanics to be a professional tennis player. Like you have to be able to run really fast and stuff, and it's not necessarily you know, gated by age. The best player in the world is like 38 or 39 years old right now, and no one born in the 90s has won a Grand Slam or been rank 1. But you don't want to see like some guy that's in terrible shape go win tennis because he has a better strategic understanding. You also do want to see them run around and hit the ball. Now that's a more obvious thing. Obviously, it's like different from StarCraft because it's harder to understand the speed that you're watching. But I think that like with the proper commentary and stuff there, the balance of it's really important to see like, oh my God, this person is so fast and like doing such, they're everywhere. They're doing everything. And I feel like that's like very, very important as well. But it is harder to see than being like, whoa, that's like, I think that might be part of the reason why SOS has so many fans. Whereas like innovation, for instance, it's like everyone knows he macros well, but do you really know how quick he's moving? it's harder to parse that out, I guess.
I can speak to this from personal experience. I'm going to tell you a story of two adepts. Two adepts shade into my base. These are two adepts from an NA Protoss. These two adepts are lunch for my 10 Zerglings. I kill the adepts and I have map control, and I feel very accomplished. I play against Hurricane in an online tournament. His two adepts go into my base, and all that is left is blood on the floor. I've lost 6 drones and the game. I queue against him again for this tournament thing, and his two adepts kill slightly fewer workers, but then his Oracle kills the rest, and I'm utterly destroyed. I've faced this thousands of times from Protoss players, but Hurricane is so fucking fast, he makes me look like he's playing at a different like time speed than I am, because he has so much finesse, so much reaction time, so much decision making of how he jukes with the shades and things like this. And when you lose that way, you don't really get to advance through all the stages, but the difference in our skill is made very clear to me. And I didn't feel like I was cheated. I felt like I was bested and crushed.
Yeah.
And I was kind of brought on here as one of the higher level players, but there are pros in the chat who are way better than me and way faster than me. And being able to sense and feel that, it gives me a very powerful feeling of respect for the amount of athleticism that is in this game. And I think that's one of the things that's not very well understood about esports in general. These are not people who are couch potatoes who are just sitting in there playing a leisure video game. This is ridiculously high-paced interaction between competitors. You can compare it to fencing or to boxing, where if you let your guard down, even for 50 milliseconds, you will get clocked out and you're dead on the floor. Like that's how brutal StarCraft is. And it's tough. Like when someone comes in and they wound you really hard and then you're like struggling for the rest of the match, it's tough and it's not always fun, but it feels very honest in that sense. And that's one of the things that makes me always come back to StarCraft. Like I was playing the classic WoW launch and leveling a character, and I wasn't really studying as much. And I was getting back into StarCraft, getting my ass kicked. And that was part of the inspiration for me starting what I'm calling samurai streams. So my samurai streams are all about the physical side of StarCraft. I study the game. I'm watching these Elima League replays, trying to learn the matchups and figure out what works and what doesn't. But the way that your body is running has a massive impact on how fast you can play, and also the distractions that you have in your environment and in your lead up to performance also have a massive impact. So this is my approximate game plan, if I can articulate what a samurai stream is. Basically, the night before is when I begin, and I start by saving my energy, being rested, doing a little bit of study, and then going to bed way early, like an hour and a half early, where I have lots of time to go to sleep and I don't have my phone light in my face keeping me up. I try to sleep as well as I can. And when my alarm goes off in the morning, I kick my feet and jump out of bed like I'm about to fight in a duel for my life. Because that's what it takes to win. That's what it takes to be a champion. Someone who trains really, really hard. And that is the only thing in front of them is I want to compete and I want to fight. So I jump out of bed, I do my routine, and I exercise. On Tuesday, yesterday, I ran outside in the snow. If you're looking at running conditions, that's the worst. It was like right at freezing temperature. There's wind whipping my face. My face is all red, getting like burned by the wind and the snow in it. But then after I had done that run and I got back to my place, whenever I got in the ladder, I had already demonstrated that I can do something badass before I start. And that gives me a crap ton of confidence going into my games. And I'm not thinking about what is my build this time? I'm thinking about I want to crush you. I want to defeat you as much as I can. And I'm going to treat this like it's a physical fight between you and me. And having that sense of readiness, preparation, it removes a lot of the inhibition that you would have about, well, should I do this or that now? With the tempo of Legacy of the Void, if you think in the match, should I do this or that now? You've already fallen behind. That's how fast it is. Where sometimes it's better to make a couple suboptimal choices really fast than to wait 5 seconds and make the optimal decision. So that side of it has been really refreshing for me. And I actually clicked into flow state for the first time in over a year playing StarCraft because I hadn't given myself proper practice. With streaming, I'm usually playing ladder and I'm talking about, well, now we're doing this. The opponent might be doing that. What unit do you want to see this time, chat? And they're like, mutas. Mutas are not good to make in a lot of situations, but they're fun units. And I had become more and more of the streamer craft player rather than the actual StarCraft 2 player, Neuro. So with the Samurai stream, all my alerts are muted. You subscribe, I'm not saying anything to you. That's just how it is. If you type in the chat and say, what do you do against Cannon Rush? I hide the chat. I can't see it. I'm not going to pay attention to you. Too bad. If I need to take a break for 10 minutes because I'm upset about losing to a Cannon Rush, I will. And I'm not going to think about, well, I need to entertain the chat. I get to actually play the game as a competitor, and the difference is about maybe 100 APM over the course of the day. You're just way faster because there's not all this other stuff that's bouncing around and distracting you and all this. So it's been absolutely fantastic. I love the physical side of the game. And it really goes against the stereotype that gamers are lazy people who are not physical. This is a super, super physical game. Just the speed of the hands of the keyboard and mouse. I think that would be something worth maybe doing a documentary on, is just seeing what these pro gamers are physically able to achieve with their hands. Bunch of badasses.
It's really
I feel
fascinating.
like one thing that's interesting to think about is that there are different kinds of mechanics. Like there's different types of speed and tempo. Like I think one thing that's really unique to StarCraft 2, especially in Legacy because of the excess minerals that you get as a result of additional starting workers, is you have these moments. Like I think of when you're attacking Zerg with Hellions around the 445 mark, and you need to attack with your Hellions, and you need to control like your Liberator or your Banshee or your Viking, and you need to build engineering bays, and you need to do all of those at the same time. And like I've never played an RTS where there was that level of simultaneity, if that makes sense. It's like it's different from like in Age of Empires 2, for example. It's also a very mechanical game. You also have hundreds upon hundreds of actions per minute, but like you're never doing stuff like that. You're spending your actions going from place to place. Like you just have a lot more random shit to do in that game than you do in StarCraft. So I feel like there's different kinds of mechanics, and I think to Max's previous point, there are some people who find the type of speed that's in StarCraft 2 very overwhelming, and then I think to your point, there are some people like yourself who find it very, very enjoyable.
Hell yeah.
This is kind of like related to it, and definitely this is something I've seen emerge a little bit more in Legacy of the Void, but I want to talk about that in a moment as well. But it's so I feel like a big part of what we're talking about here is the kind of grayish area of the mid game where we have generally the same, you kind of converge onto very similar strategies for all the races in various matchups. Like it's almost always going to be like Archon, Immortal, Zealot against Zerg, for instance, right? And you know, you're basically going to have your Marines and your medevacs and you know, against the Lings and Banes and either Mutas or Hydras or whatever, right? So you're kind of converging to this kind of grayish middle game in a lot of ways. And I think that basically, I think that one of the things that develops like later in people's skill is like multitasking. And the game at higher levels becomes very much multitasking based. And to put this clear, like there's no actual multitasking. You're not actually doing two tasks at once. What you're doing with multitasking is having a strong sense of prioritization for the regular skills of macro, of micro, of strategy, and just knowing what you want to do. What Nero was basically just talking about, right? Is like this, now this, now this, now this, because like Brownberg just said, you kind of have all these different things you kind of have to do at once. And Brown Bear, something you said in your response article, you mentioned people figuring out how the game works somewhat coincided with Legacy of the Void, but you don't feel that it had to necessarily do with the shift to 12 workers. And I kind of dig your point there, where we're still figuring out and still getting better, and people are going to continue to rise in skill, but it's not necessarily happening just because we are boosting the economy. But I don't know. I want to hear what you guys have to think about my ramble there.
So I think that's a really good point. But before I go on that, like in my office nearby, someone there's some construction, so
No
I have no
problem.
idea what's happening. Anyway, so Bromber's point, right, is that as time goes by, people figure out the game, right, and things become more the same. There's basically another way of saying it's going to reach a natural equilibrium, right? It's going to go back to the same because everyone can't know the same thing, right? Then it goes back to my earlier point. If that's the case, then the 6 workers start, you will say like, you know, oh, the build, how it interact, is going to be all the win. Then every time just keep going, then surely we converge to the same thing that, hey, we figure it out. There's no build all the win, right? The whole 2 points kind of like, you know, contradiction in terms of like, is it a benefit of like the worker change? Or is it ultimately like, you know, if we just keep letting 6 workers going to happen, right? Then people will figure out anyway, right? There's no such thing as some of the pros are saying, oh, you're going to you know, have all this build the laws and so on and so forth. If the boundaries or something is true, then we won't see that, right? Based on natural equilibrium.
There's a discussion in the chat about multitasking. Can I clear this up real fast?
Oh, sure. What are they saying?
Okay, they're like, well, does multitasking is this? Like, what is multitasking? Multitasking is like cooking. Yes, you are only doing one thing at a time with your physical self, but there are a bunch of different timers that are going. You have the 30-second timer of your inject or your chrono boost. You have the time that it takes to make a base. You have the time that it takes to morph different units. And it's true that you only do one of those individual things at a time, but those processes are running in the background. There's that timer going, and then ding, you have to go inject your base again. So you are multitasking. You aren't physically like telling the queen to make sure that that inject is working on the hatch the whole time. You start that, the process runs until it's complete, and then you can address it again. But yeah, it's cooking. It's in the kitchen, and you've got something on the stove, something in the microwave. There's something that you're stirring over here, and there's someone else who's yelling at you. You have to juggle all these things.
It's like multi-threading. It's a single CPU core, switching between tasks rapidly, optimizing, always being active doing something.
Trying to cook up the best strat you can.
Yeah.
So I think you brought up a really interesting point, Artosis. You mentioned how, like, in the mid game, we're starting to converge on. That's my cat. Sorry. We're starting to converge on like certain unit compositions and certain matchups, and how you tend to see the same compositions over and over. And I think that Negative Zero brought up a really good point in his article, where he talked about in Legacy, we have this map design constraint where your third and fourth base are equidistant from each other, and they are very easy to take. And I think that that's separate from the 12 worker issue. And I think that's a larger contributor to like this convergence of compositions, because like the incentives to just go to your best composition are so much stronger when you know that you can max out your economy, you can defend all your bases, and like you don't feel like you're taking a risk by taking a third. You feel like that's what you're supposed to do. So I feel like the role that how easy it is to take a third base, the role that plays in the meta is more important with respect to unit compositions than the number of starting workers.
Negative Zero, can you comment on that? That's kind of an interesting take on it.
Sorry, can you repeat the last like 30 seconds of that? I was reading Twitch chat.
Chat strikes
I know how
again.
that goes. Shout out to the good people in the Twitch chat. What's up?
Let me see if I can summarize. So basically, right, like because the map design constraints in Legacy force you to make the third and fourth bases easily takeable. I think the biggest contributor to that is that Protoss struggles to defend a faraway third base. So because it's easier to expand to your third and your fourth, you just have a lot of incentives to go into the mid and late game, and you just converge on these ideal unit compositions because you're kind of guaranteed to go into that late game because of how easy it is to take those bases.
Yes, and I think this is moving past the 12 worker change and now going into the other economic change, the reduced minerals. But I think the economy of Legacy of the Void not only encourages you to take those bases faster, but it actually forces you to. Otherwise, you'll drop down on your rate of mining on your previous bases, and you just can't keep up. And so it actually becomes a requirement to make those bases easy to take, and that's a cause of a lot of the complaints that I had.
Max, do you see a relation between the reduced overall, because you talked about this as well. I mean, we kind of labeled it as the 6 versus 12 workers, but your article kind of captures much more than that. But what do you see with basically what they're talking about here with it's like the reduced overall amount of money at the bases compared to the 6 to 12 worker ratio split? Like how do these two things interact in your mind?
Right. So in my article, I generally focus on the really early game, right? Of course, it's going to have some, effects later down the road and so on. The point I try to bring in, and many examples that I'm trying to.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I'm just annoying. Where was I? See, okay, distracted. Many of the points I bring out examples that I said is based on some builds early on, and builds matters more in the early game, right? And like you kind of bring out the point that things kind of converge, by wherever you build, we're going to converge to the same composition, right? Like you bring up some of the points. So when that happens, you're saying like, how does the resource in the base when it change affects all these things? So assuming that you do not mine out like early on and so on, that does not have as much or even have much of of influence on the build and opening you choose, but more about when you expand later on in the game. Of course, they are kind of related in a sense. So, and that's the reason why I try to limit my discussion on the 6 versus 12 with the stocks, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than just saying like the amount of mineral, the amount of gas you can mine per base. Yeah. That's where I'm trying to go. And I think Nav Zero is an expert in this area, whereby we go back to the team you could trust he bring up about the double mining thing. Right. So I think that perhaps actually has a lot of some underlying things that we are kind of discussing, but not exactly mentioning. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of the path we should hit towards.
See, my my biggest problem with the 12 worker start isn't actually that early game. I do think that the pro gamers are right in that for a person who's playing the game, not necessarily someone who's watching, but for someone who's playing, that the increased amount of options in the start helps to reduce the volatility, and that's probably a good thing. My big problem with the 12 worker start is actually how it scales into the late game and how fast it just accelerates all the other parts of the rest of the game. You just speed right through that mid game part where it's like you're not quite maxed yet, but you have bigger armies and you're able to micro them more, and you're still trying to like take control of the map. And so, yeah, that's why I'm focusing on the later parts of the game, because I think that's the issue. You can have that economic system that I mentioned earlier with the diminishing returns per base. I'm not going to specify double harvesting because that's only one way of accomplishing it. But if you have this economic system with diminishing returns per base, you can still have the accelerated early game that people are talking about here. That makes it better. But that scaling, that out of control scaling into the late game it's manageable a little bit. It's reduced.
Yeah, I wanna mention something you said there. So the part where you said it kind of speeds you up to getting into the later parts of the game. This is an interesting thing that I saw a lot of people just in general. I read some of the just general feedback from people on the various articles you guys wrote. But a lot of people say it skips all the boring early game stuff. And I want to cite something Brown Bear said earlier about how as a game kind of ages and gets more figured out, strategic variation goes down a little bit. I'm not entirely sure that it's actually sped up any of it, that it got rid of any of the boring parts, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What people call boring, right? Like Nick and I were kind of famous for being like, well, it's PvP. We got to wait till the Cybernetics core finishes to really, to really give you anything here. Truth be told, though, like now everyone expands at like 1 minute into the game, and a Reaper comes and it damages 4 Zerglings and then goes away, and the Oracle gets 2 kills and is in the yellow and then flies away, right? So everything actually does, in a certain way, fall into the same pattern where we were waiting for the Cybernetics core to finish. It looks slightly different, but a lot of the early game just gets boiled down really quickly into very, very similar patterns each time, which, yeah, I felt like that kind of related to what you were talking about there, Negative Zero. And again, like Brown Bear said, it just like the strategic variation goes down a little bit with time. Like think about those early games I just mentioned, like the PVZ and TVZ early game. You're just like, yeah, it looks very similar across games.
Well, I think it raises like a really interesting question because there's a difference for the 6 and 12 worker start between if you're primarily a viewer of StarCraft and if you're primarily a player of StarCraft. Because I think for a viewer, like there's some dead time in the 6 worker start and there's some dead time in the 12 worker start, but maybe it's more exciting to watch the Reaper attack Zerglings than it is to watch someone just build workers.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe for a player, you start to think like, well, I have a little bit more time to think. I can, I notice the differences in my strategic choices. They seem more meaningful. And then on the flip side, as a player, you can also think, oh, this is so slow. I want to play like Neuro. I want to go brawling, and this is, not as fun. So I think like a lot of it depends on how you engage with StarCraft. I think people who primarily view the game will think about it differently than people who primarily play the game.
Yeah, that's very true. I was actually thinking the other way around, where the people who primarily watch the game are interested in like in that early game variety of build orders, where like people who are concentrated on playing might be frustrated by more volatility and like potential of build order loss, and they have to focus more on the mind games as opposed to the actual execution of what they're doing. But yeah, it can be hilarious in a tournament. Is like, holy shit, they're going for the cannon rush or the proxy. But yeah,
Roddy brings up a good point in the chat about basically if you put competitors in front of a game, they're going to find the best strategies and just abuse them until they get patched out. That's part of the brutality of being a really, really good player, is understanding, well, this is technically better. I think this is strong, so I'm going to use it. as much as I can. And that can make things seem like they're all a similar flavor at a certain point. The longer that it patches out, the more that the best approaches are figured out for that matchup. And it can get stale, I think, if it's not changed too much. But I'm the kind of person who has oatmeal every morning for breakfast. So having a stable state meta to me isn't a downside. For a lot of viewers or players, it might be. And this kind of connects back with that point of there's a lot of room for preference in RTS, and it's really hard to please everyone. But presently, I think the game does reward quite a bit of innovation. If you do play a style that's off meta, so giving Roddy as an example, he plays so different from every other Protoss that I face that it's like a brand new story every single time. He's doing builds that no one else does. So there is a good bit of like decision making and trickery that's involved that forces me to think in addition to playing fast. And if you refine and you polish your style over the course of months and years, it can work at a really, really high level if the style itself technically is good. It doesn't have to be the very top best style, but if it's viable, then rock it.
Okay. I want to throw something out there that you just kind of made me think of, you guys speaking here. That I feel like this both like agrees with what everyone's been saying and disagrees at the same time. So especially with the main article here as well, like, okay, so Brood War, for instance, we start with 4 workers. There's actually more strategic variety and different choices, especially in the early game, but just in general, there's more strategic variety than StarCraft 2 as far as slightly different comps and build order openers, stuff like that. But at the same time, like part of the argument was that the higher mechanics required, the less strategy there will be, because it's like the RT over here and the S over here that we were all talking about before. But with Brood War, the mechanical ceiling is actually much higher and more mechanics involved for any high level of play. But yeah, we have the kind of the more things, which kind of supports the less worker theory, maybe. I'm not sure. I want to hear what you guys think about that, because I mean, while Brood War and StarCraft 2 are not the same games, they're closer to each other than they are to anything else. So I think this could be a kind of an interesting question.
So I think you bring a very good point. And in terms of the number of workers, I don't think we should create in a linear manner, whereby the more is this, the less is this, right? Like the more is more mechanical, the less is more strategical. I don't think that's true. So just to preface it, I have very, very limited knowledge in Brood War and StarCraft 1, right? So what I observe is the mechanics in Brood War is a big part of the strategy. Do you choose to spend your APM on something like microing or macroing? They can see, right, how this is going. But for StarCraft 2, a lot of things is relatively automated, relatively, right? So the macroing part is where you can kind of do it behind what you do. Does it make sense? When you focus on the micro and so on. So there's kind of figure out optimum way to spend APM in some sense compared to Brood War, right? And this at the same time, so it's how mechanics and the element of strategy comes to play, how they interact each other, right? So to compare like number of workers and so on, like it's not exactly best to put forward the argument. And the other thing to consider is like Brood War, right? One thing that I really enjoy, you can see it translates someone's thought into the game. It's like art piece, you know. I someone who like the micro more, I focus more on it. You can see in the game, right? Of course, a better player can do a lot more things better on average, but I can see I'm a more macro player. Of course, more my APM or macro, and so on and so forth, right? There's more personality to it. I think Wax Angel bring up a good point on Team Liquid. It's not exactly about Brood War. What he say is he's comparing Heart of the Storm and Legacy of the Void. But what I'm trying to say is right now, you look at, say, 2 top players with the same race, you can't really like differentiate in their personality, how much they like certain aspect of the game, what type of player they are. But you go back a little back, say Heart of the Storm, right? Any difference come to play as the worker starts. So say SOS, you know, what type of player is, right? Innovation, what type of player is, like kind of mentioned about it. Then Bomber, what type of player is, right? So you can see how all these can come and play. Like it helps fuel a bit of storyline. Cast has something to say about certain things, right? So like mechanics and strategy interact in a very different manner depending on the game itself. So let's talk about like the more workers you have linear design side, the fewer workers you have linear design side. So just try to bring the point across.
Anyone else have thoughts on this aspect?
I think to bring it back to the starting worker count and the early game and the discussion around that, I think there's a lot of differences that make them almost too hard to compare. Like Brood War, the behavior of workers is a lot different in StarCraft 2. They mine slower. You have less of them at the start, but they mine a lot more minerals per trip. So the average rate per worker of mining is higher. And then there's also this property of the workers in Brood War, just simply due to the fact that their pathing is real bad, real dumb. That, sorry to bring it back to the same topic over and over, but
no, it's fine.
It achieves this the same reduction in efficiency over time as you add more workers, as this model is trying to emulate that I've talked about before, where workers just like, they bump into each other, they have to run around looking for other patches, and eventually when you super saturate a base, like the gain starts to level off real early around one worker per patch. So yeah, if you want a system to emulate that, that's what the map makers were trying to achieve earlier. It's actually about 5 years ago. But yeah, as opposed to when you're talking about the early game though, yeah, I don't know if you can draw like a direct analogous comparison, because it's just different in those ways.
I think it's worth pointing to the design philosophy of StarCraft compared to a lot of other Blizzard games, and how the game is balanced and designed for competitive play, not for your casual gamer who wants to just play a random match once a month. It's ridiculously brutal if you're playing the latter. There are different modes that are more accessible, like campaign and co-op and things like this. But a lot of the decisions that are made with regards to maps and matchup balance are just for the competitive level. They're not trying to balance the game for people who are just starting out with StarCraft. This is a game that is made for the fastest and most effective and smartest fighters that there are. And that, I think, it can create a mounting problem if the game continues to get faster and faster, where people who pick it up feel like it's not approachable at all. That was one of the things I noticed when I went to TwitchCon as opposed to BlizzCon, is you tell people you play StarCraft and they say, well, that game is way too fast for me. I think that is an issue that inhibits some of the potential growth. But at the same time, you could say, well, is the goal to grow, or is the goal to be the fastest and best game that it can be? And that depends on who you ask. If you ask the pro gamers, they, I think, like it with the 12 workers start. It picks up in its tempo a lot more. If you're looking at the APM counter, the APM from 6 to 12 workers is going to be much lower than the APM from 50 to 80 workers, just because there are less pieces in play. So it kind of feels like they can't really flex and get to their maximum speed in that period of the game. For newer players, and I think for a lot of strategically minded players, which there are a lot of them at the competitive level and in GM, they prefer to have more time to think and a greater area to develop nuance in those building stages of the game. Ruff is a really interesting player in terms of innovating builds that no one else is doing, and he thinks about each individual building block and what he's going to do with those against the opponent in the early game in a fully off meta way. I highly respect that, and he's like the opposite archetype of a player as myself, who plays pretty standard Zerg macro, where I just try to power up, have a worker lead, and then box in the mid game. And there's beauty in that too, that we have different archetypes of players who enjoy StarCraft.
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge trying to cater. Like, it's very hard to make everyone happy, especially in a strategy game. It's better to just focus on a specific audience and deliver the best experience for them. I think there's more room in the RTS genre than currently exists for different types of games to pull in different types of people. So I would kind of look to those other games as a mechanism for pulling in people who find StarCraft 2 maybe a little too fast or too overwhelming. But you brought up a really interesting point, Dan, about mechanics. Like, one of my longest running observations in RTS is that, like, the mechanical side of the game becomes, like, it's always very important, because as people figure out the strategy, they still want to win. Like, they need to find a way to win games in competition, and the way that they do that is by they get better at the mechanics that the game offers. Oh, sorry about my cat. So, like, what happens is, at the highest levels, once a game gets really figured out, is you start to see, like, it's basically a question of, like, what mechanics do you want people to compete on? Like, do you want people to compete on selecting each one of their barracks individually and queuing up a Marine? Or do you want them to compete on, like, oh, I do all these things simultaneously and it's very fast? So I think they kind of, they're both very mechanical. It's just a question of what dimension, I guess, the mechanical burden is placed on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Two immortals on a warp prism with shield batteries.
That's the one.
Yep. This is the pinnacle of esports right here.
So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where to go from here. I feel like we've hit so many different interesting aspects of it. Negative Zero, do you have something there? I see you tilting your head, getting ready.
I was gonna talk about, like, my perspective as a map maker is completely different from figure out where to go, like, once the game is figured out, because for us, it's when the game is figured out, what's the role of us map makers in trying to, I guess, alter the game or make it more exciting or interesting. Like, in Brood War, map makers, they were responsible for balancing the game, because Blizzard didn't touch it at all after a while. But for us, it's like, we have to have the expectation that, like, Blizzard might patch the game in the future. They might balance out things that are currently imbalanced. They might not. It might take a while to do it. So when a strategy is figured out, do we say, well, do we do this weird thing that might make the game more interesting? It might provide some fun spectator experiences on this map, but potentially at the cost of being imbalanced. Do we take balance problems that we see? Do we try to fix them with the knowledge that Blizzard might also try to fix them at the same time, but at the same time that would cause, like, the balance to shift in the opposite direction? Yes, this has actually happened before. So I'm not sure if I'm actually trying to achieve any kind of conclusion, but this is just the kind of discussions that we have with each other once the game is, because of the fact that the game, I guess, is becoming a little more mapped out in the meta, pun completely intended.
Well, that's kind of the interesting part of this conversation, I think, is I don't know if there is, like, a final word or a final decision that can be made. It feels like very, very high level players all really like the 12 workers, and maybe that more grayish area of the mid game where everything is kind of lined up a bit more. And I think, Nero, you were saying how it kind of brings down some volatility and it brings a lot of it towards kind of the skill. If you put in the time, you put in the effort, you're going to be able to do well. Whereas it seems like, I feel like most of the people responding have that are not, like, super duper high level players, and this isn't like a cut or a dig at all, but most of them seem to lean towards the less workers a little bit more. And I wonder if a lot of this comes down to the spectator experience compared to the playing experience, or the pro gaming experience compared to the more casual spectator / casual player experience. And it actually reminds me of some things that we've seen in the past. especially with maps that were considered really bad, where the pro gamers hated them to death, but they were the best games that we got as far as observers, right? Like, what was that map where the siege tank didn't fit through the center? That gave us some of the best games ever. Dalron or something was it called?
Dasan Station.
Dasan, that's it. Dasan Station, that's it. But yeah, like it feels
we
like
all think
there's
that map
a
was
break
hilarious, but
it gave us great games. You remember that Scarlet played some game there that was the most crazy game of that time. Who was that first? God, I can't remember for the life of me. But anyways, it seems like that, like adding a little bit more volatility helps with viewership, but hurts with playing. I don't know.
Definitely. I agree 100%.
What's this smile?
Terrible map. She just says terrible map in the chat.
She must have lost that game. I can't recall, but it was. I remember that I was like, "This game is amazing."
To me, this whole conversation, in a way, is a reflection on history of RTS, the genre. And one aspect that comes to mind for me with RTS is that historically, it was a much more popular game genre for computer gamers. Back in the early aughts and 90s and stuff, the people who are playing computer games were more tech savvy, nerdy people who they liked a really deep gaming experience with a lot of knowledge and lore that they could study and refine and polish and improve on. And there were lots of different RTS games in that period. And the popularity of the genre relative to the overall gaming scene has gone down because, like I think Katz was saying in the chat, playing Brood War is like having to fight against Brood War and your opponent at the same time. The game is just not very streamlined mechanically. For a new person who sits down to play a video game, Brood War would be like trying to fight your way through a jungle and also trying to play a video game at the same time, just because it's so hard. People want something where you get dropped in from a ship and you have a gun and you can fight people until you die and then instantly respawn. Like that's what's really popular right now.
Those damn casuals ruined gaming, am I right?
That's for sure.
Well, I think the spirit of RTS is still very strong, but this whole discussion about 12 versus 6, I think points to maybe an open niche within RTS for something that is more in the strategic side. I think that is something that people want. Clearly, it's something that a lot of people want because this discussion was pretty spicy on Twitter as we saw leading up to it. So lots of people feel strongly about it, and lots of people preferred the 6 workers start, that tempo, and that focus on the strategy and the decision making in the early game. At the same time, the professional gamers right now in StarCraft are like, please God, no, don't do that. That would be terrible. And they're allowed to have that opinion as well. So go make an RTS that fits that.
I think the like kind of build on your point is about, you kind of sum up the talk here is about preferences. But one thing I really want to point out when we talk about preferences here is about what community like and dislike. There's something that really resonates to me is the survivorship bias. So those people who are still playing the game, or the more you play, the better you are basically those who kind of like, I'm fine with the current settings, or I like the current settings, so I just keep playing, right? So the better you get. And then those who are like, oh man, I really don't like playing this game anymore, right? Because the whatever reasons and so on, I either quit the game or I just play less, all right? So all these things come down to survival bias. If as a community, like, hey, let's do a poll, right? Do you prefer 12 workers or do you prefer 6 workers? Very likely people will say, I like the current settings, because those who don't like the current settings are more likely to leave the game. Their voices are not heard. So we kind of skew in terms of like, what the collective evaluation of the game is. It kind of indirectly in sync with what Dan said earlier on. So there might be a relationship between how good you are with the game, how much you prefer the current setting of 12 workers. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, no, what you're saying about the survivorship bias, no matter what anyone thinks about your ideas in the article and stuff, that has to be true, like as a rule, right? It's like people that really love the game and stayed really love how the game is. So it's like, yeah, there will be less dissent within that group. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, Trying to think. You guys have any other ideas, any other thoughts on this topic?
I wanted to bring up a point.
Mhm.
It's kind of just a general aspect of being a competitor that I would encourage to the community. And this is off the back of yesterday during the Samurai stream where I have myself muted and I can't see the chat. And I browsed over there between some of my games and I saw some balance whining after I lost a Zerg versus Terran match. And the match that I played was very involved. Early game harass against me. The mid game, the opponent attacked me from 3 places at once multiple times and was just consistently beating the crap out of me. I went to their player profile after the match. This is a 5.6K player with 100% win rate. I was demolished by someone who is way better than me, but then the person in the chat was saying that it really sucks to see Zerg lose to Terran like this. Zerg really needs some help in this matchup. And it made me think, can I not lose a match with dignity? I earned this loss fully. This is part of my muted practice where I'm not commentating. I'm not joking about doing fun builds and this and that. I'm focused purely on trying to play my best, and I was defeated. And that is one of the most important parts of being a competitor, is being able to fight someone who's better than you and take a legit loss. Let me have it, for Pete's sake. And if you lose legitimately, own that as well. Point out what you could do better. Point out how the opponent took the victory from you and improve. Even in like Masters and GM, you'll see people who just trip themselves up because they spend so much time talking about, well, what if it was a little bit more fair? You're wasting your own time. I mean, yes, there is a lot of room for balanced discussion, but to a point, some people just take it way too far. Losing with dignity is a really valuable life skill that can allow you to efficiently move on from the loss that happened to identifying how to troubleshoot that and how to focus and be stronger next time. Use your time efficiently. We don't have all the time in the world. Life is short.
You are my new Kobe Bryant.
Actually, about the mechanics front as well, because I was trying to say this earlier. Now I see all these boneheads like Nathanius in the chat talking about Brood War mechanics and stuff. And I want to mention that there's like a certain base of mechanics you need in any of these games. Like, for instance, to drop out of an airplane and then walk around an island and shoot people while a blue circle comes towards you. Well, yeah, that for that person, it might be hard to get into StarCraft 2 and StarCraft 2 mechanics. But once you have a certain base of StarCraft 2 mechanics, you're going to have a fun time. Just like with Brood War, you get to a certain base of mechanics, and it's not fighting the game. Like that's something that we actually used and said for a long time. But I just do want to mention that once you get to a certain level, it feels like you're playing StarCraft 2 because you just know how everything works and you have the muscle memory and stuff. But I think that kind of relates to the whole thing anyways, where it's like, part of it relates to part of the article, like I mentioned before, where it's like once you hit a certain mechanical level, then it does become very heavily about strategy, at least at the level that you're at, right? Like if you have platinum mechanics, then now you have to work on your strategy. And then once your strategy is superior, you can work on your mechanics again. Maybe now you're a diamond player or something like that.
I think one of the more interesting parts of this discussion is this idea of like mechanics versus strategy. And like, I think one of the most common actually comments I get on my blog is from people who are angry about StarCraft 2 being very mechanical. And they say like, oh, all you have to do is click things and go fast and there's no thinking involved. And I feel like the game is incredibly strategic. Like there's so much depth to it. It's just so subtle. And I think one of the challenges that StarCraft 2 has is how can it convey to people that the choices that they're making are meaningful. Like I still remember there was this one caster doing Artosis where like you said like, oh, he's going to go Stargate here. And like he hadn't built a Stargate yet. And I was like, oh, how do you, maybe he won't do that. And then he builds a Stargate. I'm like, oh, how did you know that? And it was like, oh, I saw that he wasn't researching Warp Gate. And like, it's like those subtleties are so cool, but they're really hard to notice. So I think that's a challenge, right? It's not just whether or not StarCraft 2 is strategic. I think it is strategic. It's like, do people notice that it's strategic?
Yeah. The levels, and the thing is, this goes for anything that's really worth your time in doing, I think, is that the better you get, the more subtleties, or the more you study it, the more subtleties. You don't necessarily have to be a really fantastic player. If you just spend time watching StarCraft, you're going to notice more and more subtleties and things. And if you become a better player, you'll notice more subtleties. And like, it's just that's just the case, right? Like Cyril probably sees so many more subtleties than I do within StarCraft 2. You know, it's just that's going to be the way it is, right? So he'll see something that I miss and enjoy watching that game more, or maybe even that'll make him enjoy watching it less. I don't know, but definitely a good point there.
I like this talk. I'm glad that we were able to discuss economy and some of the foundation aspects of what StarCraft is, why it is, and how it can be better. It's been a really interesting development from Wings to HOTS to Legacy.
Yeah, it certainly has. This has been a very fascinating conversation. I feel like it could go on and on. Like you just keep adding people with different viewpoints and stuff. We've hit so many different aspects of it already, and I feel like we didn't solve anything. You know, it's like I feel like I understand everything a little bit better now, and well, I guess that's a good conversation to have then, isn't it?
I know Petit Drogo wanted to get in here. He had a very pro 12 worker opinion, and I'm sure like here, I guess since people are watching, I'll just direct them towards his Twitter where he can post about it if he wants to.
Yeah, well, some of the things I did bring up, I mentioned him a little bit earlier. Some people did message me, but Drogo specifically, a big part of what he was saying, we talked about a little bit earlier, where the strategy, well, we just talked about the subtlety thing, which is obviously there are a ton of choices that pro gamers are making, but he also mentioned a lot about how less workers can make things like, very all-in strategies that become build order losses. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that this is a conversation that will come up again in the future. You guys have any other aspects of it to bring up, or that we haven't touched upon quite enough, or anything like that before we go into the Patreon questions?
Let's see.
I want to make sure we've hit all the things, because I'm sure everyone came in with a lot of things that they wanted to speak about, and we've been jumping all over. So please.
Well, one of the other map makers made a good point in chat, and that's that if the early game is slowed down and the early mid game ish, that's the time when individual unit micro is more important. Where, like, if you have a smaller number of units, you can actually focus on each one more. You can save each one. You can focus fire more easily. When you're focusing more on the late game, the multitasking aspect is more important, and that definitely takes a lot of mechanical skill too. But if you're looking for like micro engagements at that small, like intense level, then going for the slower early game might actually be a way to emphasize that part more.
I would like to issue a challenge and recommendation for the good people of the StarCraft community. Taking care of your body and your physical health is really important in life, but it's also good for your results. So it's not just you should take care of yourself, because you will play better and faster. I don't know exactly what your routine should be. I'm trying to figure out what my ideal routine is, but the differences are extremely obvious for being well rested, hydrated, prepared, eliminating distractions, being as focused and concentrated as you can. It goes a really long way. And the beauty of StarCraft is that it is your personal journey and path of progress, where you can demonstrate that this is something I have achieved for myself. I didn't have anyone carrying me through this. I didn't get lucky. There's very little RNG in this game. So if you climb leagues, if you play in an event and you take a trophy, that is fully you forever. And that's fantastic and amazing. So focus up, treat it like it's physical battle. Maybe connect with your body some strength and physicality to it, because StarCraft is a very physical game, and you're a badass for playing it, even in Bronze League.
That is a fact that I can stand behind. To give any of your time to such a challenging game, it's a worthy thing.
Yeah, I don't have anything nearly as inspirational, but I really enjoyed everyone's articles. I feel like I learned something new from each person's article, and I think that this format that Max proposed is really cool. Like, it would be cool to see more topics discussed in this way.
Oh yeah, I do want to give a shout out for that, because like Terrancraft, like I've seen it before in the past. It's been around forever, and occasionally I've gone there and read something, but I loved the way that you invited these guys to critique your article. It made it so interesting and so much good discussion around the community and so much angry discussion as well, which is in many ways more fun. But yeah, it just kind of led into this episode so easily. I'm just like piggybacking on all your hard work talking about this right now. But
so
yeah.
I'm just going to take the opportunity to I receive a lot of praise from some people as well. So one thing that they don't really mention is the effort behind contributed by other people like Net Zero, Brown Bear, Nero. There are some other people who probably don't want their name to be mentioned. So there's a lot of work going on behind it. Everybody contribute to it. Just happened to be on my side. I can't claim the credit. So make sure that everybody it's clear that not just me but everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So at the same time, if you hate me, hate them too. Okay.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, talking about people who influence this specifically, I'll be very direct and say that a lot of the ideas that I have been mentioning were developed by the map maker Cantuva several years ago in conjunction with the Team Liquid strategy team. So yeah, all credit to them. There was if you read the article I wrote, there was a previous economic model that was done by a guy named Barron, and that set the stage for a lot of the discussions that we're having later about the economy too. So credit to him. And yeah, also, I'm very well aware that a lot of what I'm saying is an ideal scenario, very much like wishful thinking. And there's probably, at this point in the game's history, there's not going to be this major upheaval in the change to the economy that I'm suggesting, where the actual mining rates are altered and things like that. But I just think it's interesting to have these discussions about game design and what could have been, I guess. At this point, I guess a more realistic compromise would be lowering the worker count to maybe 9, starting to compromise.
Sure. Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
A little bit of aspects of both.
It's good and important to have these types of talks anyways. I think that even not coming to a conclusion, like that's probably the best way. That's how you can tell, I think, almost that you had a very good talk, because like I'm not like everyone has good points, but I'm not like brainwashed to be convinced by one side or the other. I don't know. We can all learn from each other. All right. Excellent. I think we'll go into the Patreon questions unless someone has something that we missed here. No?
I think we got it.
All right. Guys, you still have time to ask Patreon questions of my lovely guests here, or even myself. Check out patreon.com/ThePylonShow. You don't have long. We're going to close it shortly. All right, here we go. From Lighton Lin. Lighton Lin asks, the Thor is now considered a building and will take additional damage from banelings. Opinions?
Why would it be awesome if Nestea killed the Thor with banelings if they did that?
That's a good point. The
baneling is already a very value-dense unit that does get complained about at a high level because you have so much kaboom in half a supply. So I would be hesitant for that. It does add a whole bunch of epicness to the banelings as well when you trade them very efficiently and still win the fight. Sorry, inefficiently, and you win the fight. So for the badass value, I would keep it as it is.
Yeah, I think the baneling is the last unit that would ever need a buff. It is the best unit in the game. All right. Thank you for the question, Lighton. Legan asks, what is optimal about preparation time between matches? A few days, 1 to 2 weeks, or maybe 1 month? What is the optimal amount of preparation time between matches? That's kind of, I think that's an interesting question. And I think that it just is different for different people. Some people play much better off the fly. There's this really interesting thing within Street Fighter that I became aware of maybe a year or two ago, is that even though like on the weekend tournaments, like I'm sure everyone's heard of Daigo, who's like kind of the greatest fighting game player. Most people believe he's the greatest fighting game player of all time. And like, he doesn't win every tournament. He does very well still. But apparently, if you give him a player to prepare against, sometimes they do these things where there's like a month of preparation and they play like 2 10-match series or something, and he crushes everyone. and like cannot possibly lose because he's so good at preparation. So my thought is that there isn't necessarily an optimal amount of preparation. It has to do with your level and the way you like to play, the way you like to prepare, probably.
I think there is a point to be made here too about some difference between Zerg, Terran, and Protoss and which races do better with more prep time. I think Zerg
that's true
tends to
too,
do
yeah.
better with less prep time because it is more fluid as
it
a
has
race.
more
And it's
workers?
less it's less build order dependent, which means you don't really have to line up a scheme for your best of 7. You can just like macro like a boss for a best of 7. Whereas for GSL, you have more time to prepare for a given opponent. So for Terran and Protoss, that means that you can think about how you're going to play each map and try to lead them along the best of 7 or best of 5.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. All right, thank you for the question. Foot4264 asks, if you could get free food or drinks from sponsors, who would you pick to be the next sponsor for GSL? What do I want for free?
Maybe that
Coffee.
cheeseburger place that's right next to the studio.
The Cry Cheeseburger.
You're a vegetarian, right?
I was actually. I'm not anymore.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what I would choose. Like Taco Bell. Taco Bell's pretty good, right? Bean burritos. Those are good. I'd probably feel like crap though. It's probably better that that isn't the case. All right. Thank you for the question, Foot. Enescu asks, can people please stop trolling by taking the 300 character limit as a challenge to ask as many vacuous questions as possible? It's making the Q&A section really tedious. And if they don't, please can we bring back Jeff's threat to not necessarily answer every question? Thanks. Wow. He's really telling me that I'm being
300 there.
Yeah.
How many questions are there in there?
Yeah, really.
Hypocrite.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm fine with people trolling. I'm very nice about.
Do you think it's an intentional shit post? Because it would be a pretty good one if it is.
I think it could be.
Yeah.
I think it could be. Wouldn't be too surprised. But maybe he really does feel that way. Enescu always asks questions in here. So thank you, Enescu, for defending me here. Paragleber asks, the GSL Super Tournament qualifier had 28 Korean pros, 10 Korean amateurs, and 6 foreigners. Why don't more Korean amateurs join GSL qualifiers? Shouldn't there be hundreds of Korean Master League players living in Seoul? Why don't they just give it a shot like Artosis in ASL? Does Korean culture discourage this? Okay, so yeah, not many people show up to the GSL qualifiers, whether that's Code S or Super Tournament. Super Tournament qualifiers are harder because less people get through. I do not know exactly why people choose. I think they just know that they cannot possibly win. But at the same time, there's a lot of lower level players that show up to things like ASL qualifiers. There will be, easily 100 people at the Seoul qualifier for that. And those people know that they can't win that. So what is the difference between that? I'm not sure. I know that StarCraft 2 is not as popular as StarCraft 1 out here, but obviously there's a lot of strong like Master League players and stuff, So yeah, I'm not sure why that is.
It's pretty amazing how wide the chasm is in skill between the people who do qualify and people who are in Masters League. It's not fully obvious, and I think for a viewer, sometimes the difference between a Masters 1 stream and a high GM stream might not be super obvious, but from the player side, it's brutally obvious.
That is really true. You can really feel it. If I play a StarCraft 2 Pro, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. You have 0 chances.
Yeah. At every moment, I'm like, I just don't have anything. Last time I played a GSL qualifier, there's a reason it was last time. Like, I forget who it was. It was not even someone who made it in. It was like Top or something.
Yeah.
And he just butchered me. And I was just like, how can it? I mean, you're like the 60th best Korean right now. Why is this so one-sided?
It's kind of like you start with 6 and they start with 12 workers.
It certainly felt that way. Knocked me down there pretty quickly. All right. Thank you for the question, Paragleber. Seth Scissors asks, with the ESL Open Cups having a couple weeks to play out, how have the cups been received by the professional StarCraft community? Have the attitudes changed from the initial announcement? I don't know if I've seen like a big change. I know that people want prize money for first and second. I thought that had gotten fixed, but I guess it hasn't as of yet. But it seems like they're stacked full of pros playing. So
the only tournament that I can watch reliably is the Korean one, and at least the first two, I didn't see any Korean pros sign up. I don't know what it's been like the past couple of weekends.
yeah, more have. Like the first one was kind of a little bit empty for sure, but comparatively. But the European one seems very popular. And then the NA one seems very popular with Europeans and Koreans, so that's cool. All right, sorry we can't answer your question a bit better than that. HyperTurtle asks, to Brown Bear, do you do your own artwork? What is the symbolic significance of being represented by a bear that is green instead of brown?
Yeah, so I first created my channel assets like 5 years ago when I was first starting out, and I just opened up Microsoft Paint and I painted something that seemed reasonable, and then I started using it everywhere. And then after a while, it just became like this meme, which is really convenient for me because I don't want to pay someone who's good at art to make something real. So I just take advantage of that now to continue using that as my logo.
All right. Well, I guess it worked out well. Thank you for your question, HyperTurtle. Saint Zero asks, I am a shill like this, a shill for Brood War. The Coach Pupil League Season 5 just got announced. You can find the threads on our StarCraft, our Brood War, and TL.net. If you want a great place to learn Brood War, check out the CPL. We laugh, we learn, we love, we get your games casted. Check it out. All right. Thank you, Saint Zero. We also went over that in the This Week in StarCraft. Do check it out if you want to learn Brood War. Mitchimus asks, noob questions incoming. How do I know what guests will be on the upcoming episode? Questions asked by others often have relevance to the episode currently airing. How do they know more than me? And since I've already exposed my noobery, mind explaining the origin of Is It Though? Love the show. Okay, so we try to announce ahead of time when possible. It sometimes takes several days for people to respond to their messages. -0. But yeah, we're trying to announce
doing things.
Yeah, we're trying to announce earlier and earlier. And sometimes we have shows booked over a week in advance. For instance, the Toby episode we had booked for over a month in advance, and we announced that a week in advance, I believe. And yeah, it matters how quickly Cobra and I can get a show together. And just check the Pylon Show Twitter and my Twitter, and we'll let you know who's coming on.
We're going to do a better job about announcing that on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, like all the things. If you want to know, follow those things.
Yes, and those are all on ThePylonShow.com. You can click on the links to follow those very, very easily. But yeah, we're working on that because we do want to. The goal that we have is to announce every episode on the previous episode, but it's sometimes hard to get that all together in time. Sorry about that. And the origin of Is It Though? I believe that the origin of this is actually from Thor Ragnarok, where that was like a funny line and Jeff really liked it. So he started just saying it like that all the time. No matter what we said for months, he would just be like, Is it though? And yeah, that's the origin of that. All right. Thank you for the question. Polly asks, would there be still a pro gaming scene when Blizzards end their support and shuts down GSL, WCS, EPT, etc., like Heroes of the Storm? Or do they have to switch to other games or even have to find a conventional job? Is there anything we can learn from HOTS?
You can't kill StarCraft.
I think the better comparison would be Brood War, where like the pro scene ended in Korea and like it still continued on the Freaka on the streams, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to kill StarCraft 2 unless Blizzard made StarCraft 3. I think that is the only way you could end having like some level of pro scene, because everyone just loves the game too much. It's just like the fact, yeah, the amount of people that still watch this 10-year-old game and enjoy it. It's
the passion of this scene is ferocious and it's relentless. And that's a thing that we've kind of hit different waves of doubt where something happens and people say, is StarCraft going to survive? And then we keep representing our strength and dedication to this game because it's awesome. So whenever you feel like you're doubting the life of the game, I would say just look at the enthusiasm of any of the fans. It's ridiculous. And it's been around for decades, and it's going to stay around. Like Brood War, it's now a cultural and historical thing. You cannot take Brood War away from the world. It is now something that has been firmly solidified into the collective consciousness. StarCraft 2 as well, it's on the same track. It's been around for a long time, since Wings of Liberty, and I'm still fucking excited to play it. It's an amazing game, and there's so much to learn for every person who plays.
I think it's
Warcraft 3 Reforged with Terry the Holy Spear.
Sorry, say that again.
Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Hmm.
You know, basically can like not do anything to the old game, but still not allow people from owning the old game to play the game. Does it make sense?
That would be a way to kill.
Never say never.
Yeah.
StarCraft 2 remastered. The game looks good still. I don't feel like it's too far behind in graphics. I like StarCraft 2.
What are you saying, Brownback?
I know the original questioner kind of raised up Heroes of the Storm. I think it's important to remember when you compare the two games that Heroes of the Storm's professional scene was structured such that it was extremely expensive, and StarCraft 2's is not structured in that way. So like it's very different incentives for the decision makers within Blizzard. And I think as others mentioned, like I think Brood War is a better comparison.
I think also it should be noted that games that spawn their own pro scenes versus games that come pre-built with, hey, we're going to make this an esport, we're seeing a very big divergence there, because HOTS came out and they're like, this will be an esport. StarCraft 2, it wasn't really the case with that. Like, obviously they had some small things they wanted, like GSL to exist and whatnot, but it really kind of grew itself. Likewise, Hearthstone did pretty well for quite some time as an esport, but they had zero plans to have that be competitive at all. Yeah, I think that you can kind of just look across all sorts of games where it's like, oh, this just gained popularity, and so it's like a game that's not going to go away easily. But I want to alter the question a little bit, guys. How many workers would they have to adjust for us to start with to really ruin StarCraft 2 and make everyone quit? Like, if you started with like 30 workers, would StarCraft 2 be done? It would just be too ridiculous. Like, you send 5 workers to go harass and proxy buildings immediately or something.
9 bases, 69 workers. Let's go.
Nice.
0 workers, just the 50 minerals.
Oh, that would be terrible. Oh my God, that would take forever. Can you imagine that? Oh my God. All right. Thank you for the question. Okay, Red Gunner Guy asks, how the heck do players grind so many ladder games? After 3 to 4 games, I feel tired and like, good enough, I'm done for today. Is it a performance thing, or also 300 characters per question are enough? Great show. Happy to see Terrancraft on. Love it. Hope the Elementary series gets finished.
Oh.
Is this a burn? I'm missing something here.
So I created Elementary series because way back there's a lot of newer players like free to play and come ask me for help and so on. And I never thought about helping community, I'll be honest with you. I write this for myself, what I think is interesting, improve my own writing and so on. I didn't even PR myself, if it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people ask me for help, and I was like, okay, fine, I should do something for community and so on. So I created people do bronze and master thing. I just do like basic kind of theoretical thing, what's macro, what's micro, and so on. But I always prioritize more topical stuff, like what happened at point time, the build meta game. And I can't remember when was the last time I posted something like that. And the series is on pause, and I have a few topics put on hold. So thanks for the reminder. And I promise you, I'm going to finish it in the next 5 years.
Okay, in the next 5 years, not too bad. So by the time StarCraft 2 is 15 years old, you'll have this series finished up. You're basically like Apollo.
Soon, TM.
To the question, I actually experienced exactly what this nice person is talking about, where you play 3 matches. I was in Bronze League in Wings of Liberty. I would play 3 matches and I felt like I needed to go take a shower and then go to sleep. It's just like super involved and you feel knees weak, arms spaghetti, and you're nervous and it's really tough. So how can a pro gamer play for 8 to 9 hours? The same question you could ask would be, I see people running marathons and they ran 6 marathons in a year. I'm winded after 1 kilometer. It's practice. You have to perform and immerse yourself in that situation more, and your body and your brain will adapt.
Yeah. That's it definitely, it's like you have to kind of change your mindset and decide that you want to do it. I switched over from being a play 3 to 4 games and walk away person to like 12 hours a day back in like 2004. And that was like a huge mentality shift where like I wanted to get up for days. I wanted to get up and just leave. And I'm like, nope, you got to sit here if you want to win any tournaments. So yeah, I don't know.
StarCraft must evolve, must grow.
Yeah.
It must indeed.
Well, here's what you do, in my opinion. You give up, you don't stop playing the games, and you just make maps instead. Now, instead of suffering yourself, you can contribute to other people's suffering, and it's more satisfying.
Beautiful. I love it. All right. Thank you, Red Gunner Guy, for the question. Optional Player asks, I've been trying to get into the mindset of e-casters. On one hand, you're contracted to work. On the other, it's your passion to perform well and know the game. Yet you aren't paid for that. Yet it's what makes you qualified to work. How do you reconcile that? Is there a feeling of exploitation at all? Yeah, I mean, there can be feelings about that. I mean, I love StarCraft and I'd be playing it and thinking about it and stuff, whether it was my job to cast it or not. And yeah, it can be a very frustrating and difficult thing when you're negotiating with the companies or people or whatever for work, where they're like, oh, but you're casting for 1 hour. And it's like, okay, well, do you understand that I have 20 years of expertise on this? And like, this is my job. So like, I'm not going to do that for $45. That's not going to occur. So yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating and stuff for sure. And the feelings of exploitation can occur as well.
Think of the exposure.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is a big platform. No, it's not. Get the fuck out of here. All right. Thank you for the question. Ryan Yu asks, is there a confirmation that there will be GSL Code S this year, or will it just be super tournaments with different seasons? Do any of you guys know the answer to this? Because I can't say unless one of you guys knows the answer already. Guys, a lot of people, they come to my stream and they're like, so Artosis, like GSL, is it happening? And it's like, did you know that my stream is not where we announce things about the GSL? Did you know that whatever I know, it doesn't mean just because I know it, I'm going to tell you?
Come on, dude, just tell us and then delete the VOD.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's been announced. I don't keep track of that because I don't need to, because they tell me. Sorry. I don't know. Anyways, at least we know that there's a super tournament, right? There we go. So thank you for the question, I guess. Grassy Tiger asks, I would like a Banshee buff. What if they made it build 5 seconds faster? Mass Banshees, maybe? Do you think Zerg will dominate the meta this year? I would like a Pylon show where special debates TLO on game balance, 3 exclamation points. Everything TLO says sounds like phony baloney, and it would be cool to see it. / period, / period, / period.
Reaching for the 300 characters.
Yeah, that's must be it. What am I reading here? I don't think you need to buff Banshees.
No.
Like they're already good.
What if they hit double and then you could one-hit workers?
Damn.
And
What
they
if they
didn't have
came with their
energy for
speed
stealth.
upgrade?
What if they had Blink?
Ooh, that would be good. You could
That would be
research
good.
Blink, though. You'd have to have them research it.
Of course.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it'd be imbalanced, right?
But do you
think
put
it
it
should
on
be
the
a
fusion
Blink?
core?
Yes. It could be a map-wide teleport like the battlecruiser.
But with the blink cooldown.
All right, some high quality. The thing is, at this point, I don't even know if people are like trolling or memeing or anything. Once upon a time on the internet, you blast me back like 15 years ago, I always knew, is this post sarcastic? Is this a troll? Is this a meme? Nowadays, I'm like, I think the / periods and all the TLO talk. Yeah, this is a meme. Okay, thank you for your memes.
Someone in the
Grassy
chat
Tiger.
had the best idea so far. Banshee should burrow.
Put a drill on the
Now,
front
would
of it,
they-
and it can go underground.
Yeah,
Would things that only hit ground, like could a Marauder hit it while it's burrowed? If you
Yes.
had vision. Okay.
We could do an episode.
burrow.
You could do an episode on the Pylon Show where at the end of each of these questions, there's a poll that goes up in the Twitch chat. They have that feature that says, was this question a shitpost or not? And they can vote yes or no.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Matt, get on that.
What do you think for this one, chat? Yes or no?
All right. Excellent. I have a feeling this is going to lead to more shit posting in the questions, though, which is like
hey,
hard
they have
to
to
even
pay
imagine.
for it. They have to pay for it.
Totally. Happy to read it, guys. Happy to read it. 300 characters doesn't take me that long. All right. Our very own Alessandra asks, I always know this one's not a troll, so I was thinking about what new map modes Blizzard could come up with and settled on Destructible, wherein the map crumbles over time from the outside edges inward.
Oh, that
and
sounds
use
like a troll.
Yeah, no, now that I'm reading it, and use of powerful abilities like Nidus or Nukes greatly accelerates the problem. Thoughts on your own radical new map mode ideas?
All right, well, I'm going to take this one way too seriously just for fun.
All right.
And just say, no, that is an awful idea for game balance. The entire structure of the game and the defender's advantage revolves around the bases being spaced apart far enough to get a round of units out during the time it takes across the map. Otherwise, games would be way too volatile and you could just win by cheesing. And making the map condense from the outside would take out the outer areas, force everyone to the middle, and everything would just, for lack of a better term, be a clusterfuck. And yeah, your mains would be gone, your nats would be gone, all the expansions would be gone. Yeah, real good game mode there. I think it would.
I think there should be an Archon mode where you get a single unit, and it's 200 versus 200 players. So maybe you get a drone, maybe you get an ultra, and you have to work together to defeat another opposing army of 200 people. Being a worker would be extremely boring, and that's part of the challenge.
Wow. You'd really want to be the scout worker, like real bad.
Yeah.
Please. All right. Yeah, no, nothing's coming to my mind. This is like it reminds me of that like lava map, right? Where the lava comes up and screws you up, or like PUBG or something like that. Maybe if the buildings could all fly, like all buildings can lift off and move. But then the cannon rush meta gets real at that point.
No.
And then swarm hosts don't do anything anymore. You just lift off your nexus. It can't die then.
Oh,
So-
all right. Okay, I'm down. Good game mode.
Good game mode. All right. Thank you, Alessandro, for trolling me the one time I said that you would not. Fear Dragon asks, what if instead of 6 worker starts, you started with 12 and 400 minerals, but no Nexus CC hatch? It'd slow down the game, and you could outplay your opponent with better worker micro without fear of the 13th worker. Also, build your main where you want, so no random spawns. Player agency. Thanks, Fast Ice Cube.
Go
My
play
brain is almost
Empires.
melting thinking about this question.
Literally
Karen's
just
gonna win.
go play Age of Empires.
Protoss would be the strongest, right? Because you start your Nexus, then you get all 12 workers, whereas Zerg sacrifices a drone or Terran is building their command center with their SCVs.
You don't
But I guess
have
your
to, right?
workers would be idle during that time, right? Because there's
Well,
no nexus.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you send them across the map to attack, right?
Okay, that's a good point.
That's what I'm saying. You have 12 probes against 11 SCVs then. That's sick.
Didn't Katz already do a build where he like pulls half his workers at the start and attacks and then mines with the rest? I think it's a ZVT build.
Sounds
That's happened.
Dark did that in Zerg versus Zerg and lost pretty badly.
That's true. That's yeah. All right.
Poll is live in the chat. Blinker Burrow. Vote now.
What is this? I love it.
People are just voting Burrow for memes.
I'm going with Blink. I'll give Blink to every unit in this game. Oh, look, I can vote again for 10 crystal things. Does that cost money?
Pay to win.
Yeah, Twitch bits.
Oh, Twitch bits. Oh, never mind. Never mind. Oh my God. I almost spent 10 cents right there, boys. I don't want to do that. All right. That's wonderful. I had no idea you could do this. I am just, I don't know anything about anything, do I? All right. It looks like we only have a few more questions here. Let's go ahead. Thank you, Fear Dragon, for your wonderful idea. This is the guy that goes Blink DT every game, by the way. Some other guy asks, what else would have to change in Legacy of the Void to make a change back to 6 workers possible? Would that be possible at all and accepted by the pro community? Thanks, great show. So I think his question is basically like to alleviate the concerns that pros have voiced, because they seem to be the most anti-6 worker. Is there something else that you could change to make the 6 worker change still a good, like still good, but like basically make both parties happy, I guess, people that want it and people that don't?
Higher prize pools.
The only answer, right?
Maybe.
Guaranteed
you'd
prize
have
money
to-
for everybody.
I think you'd probably have to increase or make it easier to scout so that pros avoid those builder losses. I think as long as they can avoid losing, as long as they feel like games are always decided based on who's better, then I think it's fine. And I think that the way to do that would be to make it easier to scout. But I think that the problem there would then be that you kind of get rid of some of the imperfect information aspect of the game. And that's one of the nice things about Legacy is that it's very much an imperfect information game still, because you're flexible and you can do a lot of different things.
You could also have an early game banter where the 2 players try to talk shit to each other and then the audience votes on who is better at the banter.
The person who gets who wins that vote gets a couple extra workers.
Yeah. There you go.
Here's actually a small idea. They were playing with this for a possible Brood War map. They were considering putting in like a 5 or 6 player map into one of the leagues, and what they were the thought was, and I don't know why they ended up saying no. Probably this is a terrible idea. I don't know. You guys can tell me, but there was going to be something on your ramp where your worker couldn't get out of your base without picking it up. But when you picked it up, it would give your opponent vision of that right there, of you picking it up. So basically, they would know when you were leaving your base and which base you were at. And the thing is, when I run through my head, the things that are wrong with a 5 or 6 player map, where like you don't scout them quickly enough and stuff like that, that actually fixes a lot of it, because you can't just expand right off the bat. You can't run out of your base and proxy something right away, things like that, right? You basically are showing where you are.
Yeah, it does solve all the problems. Like, that's great for gameplay, assuming that you have a 5 player map. But my question is, why do you need a 5 player map? What about the terrain features of a 5 player map would actually improve the gameplay? It's just like you have the same series of 5 bases copied and pasted over and over again.
Well, okay, yes, no, I totally, okay. I tip my hat to you, sir. But I'm saying, would this be something that would alleviate some of the pros' concerns of starting with 6 workers? Something like this, that's like, oh, he's leaving his base right now with his probe, right? So you're on alert that there could be like a proxy or something like that.
It really depends on the execution of the vision itself. So if you pick something up, right, like, is it permanent on that worker itself? If it's not, it doesn't really matter, right? Is it where I'm going this?
Yeah.
I pick it up, I just put it back to mining, like, what?
I guess that's a mind game, right? Yeah.
So when I pick it up, I think I remember this very clearly way back. I think it's IEM. hero versus innovation. So like innovation, I think it's on Frost. Innovation scout around for player map, scout hero, no expand, pylons missing, then split the tech somewhere. So just go around the map, finding that what exactly is the tag. He cannot find it, so he roll his die in some manner, right? And there you go, right? So right now, someone's going to process something, but all the options, does not exactly solve the problem itself.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of this, truly. All right. Good question, some other guy. I think we don't have a perfect answer for anything in this conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, not to mention, I think like any major change, there will be people complaining. There's no way to make people happy.
It is a universal truth that humans are very good at complaining. I agree.
Yeah. All right. A couple more questions here. Zip asks, it seems like resume from replay didn't pay off as much as the community expected. Is that true? And what are your thoughts on the feature? Yeah, that is a good point. I remember when that was announced, I was like, wow, this is going to change how people practice. This is going to be huge. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be amazing. Yeah.
It's actually been really useful for me for coaching. So if there's a student who gets in a situation, say right before there's a glaive adept attack and they don't know what to do, you can just go into the situation. I, as the coach, can take whatever timing was about to attack them, and I'll tell them what the procedure should have been, and then they can practice it in that moment. So I think it is a rather effective coaching and teaching tool. It's not used super often, but sometimes I'll also play a match against an opponent and maybe they disconnected for some reason, but then they come back and say, hey, do you want to finish playing out the match?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be for ladder points, but oftentimes the two players want to know and the viewers want to know who is going to win. So it's cool.
That's a good point. Yeah, like tournament play, it helps with that too.
I think the main case where viewers would expect to see it is like if someone disconnects in a live tournament and they need to just continue the game again, and that just hasn't been as much of a concern recently because the internet's just gotten better since 2010.
Definitely could have used that at a few choice times during history. Yeah, it's a good feature to have. I personally just haven't used it. I don't know. I just ladder when I play StarCraft 2, so it never really comes up. Thank you for the question, Zip. All right, last question for the night. VDEC asks, how is coronavirus impacting StarCraft 2? Also, we should allow battlecruisers to take burn damage when low on HP. I don't think they need any more nerf than they've gotten personally, but coronavirus impacting StarCraft 2. Well, the super tournament got pushed back because of it. This is kind of the off season, so I'm not sure what else, if anything, has been. Well, WESG might get pushed around because that tournament is supposed to take place in China. And they already mentioned they canceled the Asian Pacific region finals, but the main one we don't know yet what's happening with that. It's supposed to be in March, so maybe everything's just cleared up by then. But definitely, it's impacted that at least.
I think what a lot of people, especially if you live in the United States, may not realize is that people in Asian countries take this kind of situation much more seriously than like Americans do. Just the way that countries here are structured with much higher density, more public transport, and all of the bad memories from SARS, they're just like exercising an abundance of caution. So like here, where I live, if you're not outside wearing a mask, you're very strange. Whereas if you're in the United States and you are wearing a mask, people will think that you're strange. So there's a cultural difference there, which is why I think it's impacted Asia more.
Yeah. It's everyone here is wearing masks everywhere right now. Like everyone has a mask on at all moments. The government sent out masks to schools. My daughter's elementary school was canceled this week. It's definitely being taken really, really seriously. And Max, you live in Singapore, don't you? Is there anything going on there with it?
It is. So I think right now Singapore have a lot more cases. I think only second or third behind China of confirmed cases.
Oh wow.
I'm I didn't keep track of the latest numbers, but that's what I kind of remember. So I think like it's very serious. SARS is a big deal way back. And right now, they're how it kind of shift the norm. So like about a week ago, I was wearing a mask, and people look at me, and a few teenagers take out the phone and try to take a picture of me, and think I don't know about it. Post on social media like, what is this guy wearing a mask for? You know, all these things. But right now, you can see the number increases along the way, and the government give us a mask. One thing kind of interesting is that the government were like saying like, you know, we don't have enough mask, and the shop can't run out of mask. So it's kind of a big deal. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's how it seems to be impacting everything.
It's affected me personally because if I moved to Korea, then I would guaranteed be Grandmaster competing at pro level, but I can't because it's so close to the outbreak. So I'm stuck here in the US making maps.
Damn. I feel for you. And you were talking to me, you were saying I'm coming over to be a pro now. And then this happened and here we are.
I know.
All right.
It's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. That just about does it for the episode. Guys, this was a scintillating. Is it scintillating or scintillating? I only read this word.
Scintillating.
This was a scintillating conversation. I really want to thank you guys for joining me. The articles were really, really enjoyable. Again, for anyone who wants to learn more about these guys' viewpoints and stuff, check out terrancraft.com where all 4 articles are posted. Why don't you guys tell our viewers where they can find more of you, follow you, check out your stuff and all that. Negative Zero, why don't we start with you?
Just search Negative Zero on Twitter. My actual username is really stupid, and I don't want to try to pronounce it on stream, but it's Negative Zero put through a Route 13 cipher. If you want to look that up, yeah, just find Negative Zero on there.
All right. Is that all? You don't have any streams or maps you want people to check out?
All right, I guess I should plug the mapped contest that's coming up, the TLMC. I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, but yeah, check out Wardy's tournament. It features the top 16. Post on Twitter, Team Liquid, wherever you can with your feedback about the maps, especially if you're a high-level player. We are always interested in hearing more of that. Best time to do it is before they get on the ladder and not afterwards when we can't do anything about it. So, yeah. Other than that, yeah, I don't have any other like social media that I share with StarCraft people. So
cool. All right. Brown Bear, how about you? Where can people find more of you and check out your work and all that? All right. Maybe he went up to go to the bathroom or something.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I didn't unmute. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So you can find me on Twitter, brownbear_47. I'm also on Facebook, Brownbear Gaming. I don't have as much time as I used to, unfortunately, to create content, but I try to write articles once every couple of weeks, and I try to make YouTube videos once every couple of months. I have a new article coming out this weekend, so if you want to check that out, be sure to give me a follow on Twitter.
Great. And Neuro, how about you?
On Twitch, I am Neuro. On Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, I am NeuroZerg. I have a podcast that is called The Voice of Neuro, and we have about 14 to 15 episodes or so. I recently did an episode titled 2020, Progress and Goals. I just hit 5 years of being a Twitch partner pretty recently, and I took some time to think about the original purpose and mission of the channel, which is having a mindful product on Twitch, trying to be a little bit more mature, trying to do a lot of what Day 9 did, which is encourage people to be better gamers and better people. Gaming is an amazing space of self-expression and discovery, and we can really work together to be as excellent as possible through that process. We talk about stuff like politics on The Voice of Neuro, philosophy. We even have a couple math lectures that are kind of intro-oriented, trying to help people get connected with what mathematics is and why it's amazing. And this Friday, I'll be watching the play that Golden wrote and directed in South Korea. It's going to be in Korean with English subtitles, and it's called Player. And it tells the story of a professional gamer, the ups and the downs, the glory and the struggle and the stress. Golden is an amazing content creator. He's been a major inspiration for me in terms of just memes and content creation. He'll put on the Titanic theme while something really sad happens in the match. He's really got that showmanship that I respect a whole bunch as part of being an entertainer on Twitch. So that will be Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific time this week. And then, as I mentioned before, the Samurai streams are every Tuesday. Those start at about 2 p.m. Pacific. If you want to tune in and say hi to me and not get a response, that's the perfect day to do that. And then, and then on Thursdays, we just started a new D&D campaign. That's Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I'm playing with Exile 5 Pig and with Ash of Cockeyed Gaming. It is produced by Cody Venom himself. I'm playing Carl, the Kenku Barbarian. I'm basically a bird person who is addicted to potions that make him very strong, heal him, and things like that. So if you like a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of storytelling in RP, Apoptosis is a ridiculously good dungeon master. He's great at doing the voices, and the story is supposed to be pretty personal and simple. We're kind of contrasting Star Wars, the saga films that are very grand and there's a lot of stuff going on, versus The Mandalorian, which is very direct and simple in its delivery. This is just 3 characters, a bunch of idiots trying to survive and not die to bandits. So it's been a whole lot of fun. Check it out every other Thursday. So it's not going to be this Thursday, but the next Thursday we'll be doing that again.
What's your character name on that one?
Carl, the Kenku.
Okay. Because I was going to say, when you said you were a bird person that was addicted to potions that make you stronger, I was like, what are you, Artosis here? What's going on? People have been putting that stupid bird meme up. All right. Thank you, Neuro. And Max, where can people find more of you, follow your stuff, check out what you're doing, all that?
Right. I'm mainly do all my articles posted on ThePylonShow.com. So that's where you get it. And I don't have YouTube. Some people ask me. I don't have Twitch. I don't stream. So I only write. I'm academic, only write. You can follow me on Twitter on MaxESC. And just an additional point, if people ask me, SC is not StarCraft. It's my initial. My first name initial, given name. So there you go.
All right. Excellent. And as for me, I want to once again shout out our sponsors, of course, matcherino.com/ThePylonShow. Use the code word cherry. You can just print money for us. It's so sick. And of course, we have some new shirts and mugs and stuff out there. If you'd like to support the Pylon Show in that way, we really greatly appreciate that. And of course, our Patreon. You like the episode? You like the show? You want to help us keep it going? Please consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/ThePylonShow. A big shout out to Astrofin, Field of Sins, Jerry Wang, Manard, and Shane for being big contributors to the show over there at $100 tier. Yeah. And of course, ThePylonShow.com. Go there for all of your Pylon Show needs, anything you need to check out, the show notes and all that. And a big thank you to the Pylon Show team, because I definitely do not do this alone. I would be really amazing if I could, but I can't. Yeah, and that is about it. I have been streaming a lot more lately. I'm getting a lot more into that aspect of it, and updating my YouTube every single day with a new high quality video. So check that out, ArtosisTV on YouTube and right here on Twitch. And big thanks to everyone who supports and follows the channel and subs. Make sure you do all that stuff. And thank you again to my guests here. This was really a great conversation. So thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you all next week.
GG. Long live RTS.
Shout out to the Pylon Show, the greatest show on the internet.